Because you've got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing or mine.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on a Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump, you know what I'm saying?
Welcome, folks, to a very special Easter edition-ish, coming on a Monday of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, number 614, actually. You can catch us at 8 o'clock in the UK, 12 o'clock Pacific time in the United States, and then you can find us the next day wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can also check out and join our Patreon at patreon.com/Boxing Asylum, where there's a lot of good stuff. You can get in the Boxing Nutters Messenger group, get a little bit of extra stuff from Steve Wellings as well, who always provides excellent insight into the sport. And I'd like to welcome our newest Patreon subscriber, Nick Thomas, as well. And he joined at the highest tier. Nick isn't messing around at all. He must have gotten out of the crypto market at a good time. Thank you for joining us, Nick. We appreciate you. So joining me today, we've got Justin, we've got Des, and we've got a member of the Council of Matthews. This is Matt Montequia. Yes, we're going with the Spanish flavor today, and we're here to talk about some Gabriela Fundora, some Dalton Smith, and we're gonna kick it off with Ben Whitaker getting a second round stoppage over Liam Cameron. There was argument about 12 or 10 rounds. Well, the difference was 2, and as you have it, 2 rounds. At least that's what the referee allowed it to go. I got the highlights of this one. It wasn't long enough for it to really matter. In my opinion, I thought it was a little bit early, and his gloves were in pretty good position to be calling a stoppage like that. But Whitaker gets a TKO round 2 over Liam Cameron, getting revenge and maybe gaining a little bit in the eyes of the boxing public. But Des, I don't know. I thought the stoppage was weak, and it's not the first few rounds that we have questions about with Ben Whitaker. It's the deep waters.
Yeah, that's true. Happy Easter, Matty. Happy Easter to all the guys on the panel, all the guys everyone in the chat. Happy Easter to everyone out there. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. On regards Whitaker, I think we saw a kid that did everything that we asked of him. Now, we've got to separate certain areas of this conversation and what we think of Whitaker, where we think he's going, and what we've seen so far. What we've seen with Whitaker is a kid that can come through the amateurs with an Olympic medal, various national and multinational titles, and he's put himself in that echelons of top prospect. Let's remember that, top prospect. But up till now, 9 fights in, we haven't seen a lot to really fall in love with. And when I say top prospect, I'm talking about an Andy Cruz, Oslays, Iglesias, David Morrell. They're what top prospects look like. Oscar, coming out of Barcelona, was a top prospect. Mayweather, coming out of Atlanta, was a top prospect. Well, if this guy is in the same bracket as them, as a top prospect, I think he should be moved a bit faster. I think we should see a bit more out of him in what's coming up to 3 years as a pro. That said, all we can judge him on so far is what he's overcome. And the last 6 months have probably been the hardest 6 months of his adult life, because he's been undermined, he's been judged, he's been ridiculed, he's been name-called, and he's had almost pretty much everyone pointing a finger at him saying, you swallowed it last time out because the going got tough. Last night in his own city, they was booing him. So he's got to overcome a few mountains. But last night was a start. That's how you do it. And I'll tell you what I mean. He's taken himself away. So he went out to Ireland and he trained. And he surrounded himself with a good trainer. Someone who I think is quite level-headed, quite well-balanced. And we're not jumping on the Andy Lee bandwagon now. We've been saying this about Andy Lee for the last 10 years. When he took himself away to Manny Stewart, before that even. And we've always spoke well of Andy. So I
his
think
training career could surpass his fighting career, honestly, when all is said and done.
I think it will, if I'm honest. I think he'll be remembered as a better trainer than he was a fighter. But I think Andy Lee's a good fit for him, and we'll come to the fit and the balance in a minute. But what did we see of Ben? He was pretty calm in the build-up to this, and he was being goaded. And then when he came out in round one, I made a note that he was very fast, he was very snappy. He put Liam on the back foot, and that was really important because Liam was like an old pro in there. He was almost like, I'm going to take you into the 4th or 5th round. Let's see what your gear changes are like. And let's see if my motor skills can overcome yours. And Liam was throwing out this pouring jab just to try and knock Ben onto his back foot. Or he was whipping out that slow, long hook. But Ben never come off the front foot mentality. He never stopped throwing a fast, snappy jab. I didn't like the stoppage, but I think the stoppage was coming. And interestingly enough, Liam never complained. He never even pulled a face. It wasn't like, in contrast to Ebenezer Tete, the fight before, who thought he was too premature. Liam didn't even have a moan. So that tells you a lot. If I can just come off the fight for a minute, I don't like the antics of the promoter. I think the promoters shouldn't be getting in rings. They shouldn't be eyeballing people. They shouldn't be waving their hands in the air. They've not won nothing. I don't like this new trend. I want it to stop. I think promoters should stop doing interviews. They do more harm than bleeding good. But for Ben himself and what he did with Dalton, it's emotion. And Dalton's the first guy. He's a big boy. He put his arm around him at the end, give him a cuddle, and said, I get it. This is boxing. A trainer and a boxer do get each other. They can have a bit of a clash. They can have words. Them guys get each other. So I've got no issue with that. I won't make a big deal of it. The performance was everything we asked of him. But from this point on, and if we're to assume that Ben is out in July, that's 3 years as a pro. It'd be his 10th fight or 11th fight. He needs to get going. And if you look at the landscape in Britain, look, putting Buatsi to one side, and obviously Bivol and Beterbiev, let them sort whatever they're doing out between themselves. But we've got guys knocking around that I think Whitaker could really step up, fight and beat. And that would put him in that almost that top prospect, like a Andy Cruz, like a Iglesias, like a Morrell. Perhaps not as high and as good as them, because they started a lot quicker. But it would cover a lot of ground with Ben. And I think if you look at the way Lyndon and Cameron fought a split, and look what Whitaker's just done to Cameron, I think you could safely say Ben Whitaker could fight a Lyndon Arthur. And if he can fight a Lyndon Arthur, he could probably fight a Dan Aziz. And if he could fight a Dan Aziz, why can't he fight a Willie Hutchinson? So can you see how the doors can open now? But I don't want him to be slowed down. I don't want him fighting 3 times a year. I don't want this to sort of become, there's more to Ben than boxing nonsense. Let's get him active. Let's get some recognisable names, and let's get him into that British, Commonwealth, and European level in the next 12 to 18 months, where he's climbing, winning, and defending them belts. And in 2 years' time, we might have a 20-0 or 20 and something Ben Whitaker that can fight for world titles. But that's the way I'd go with Ben now. Last night, he done everything right, no qualms. But we still haven't seen a lot of Ben. And I think the next 12 months could be our opportunity to see a lot of him.
Well, and I kind of like to see him with a bit of a rough fighter taking him into the late rounds, which Justin, we obviously didn't get to see through this. What were your thoughts on the stoppage? Or are you kind of fair to middling on it, or did you feel it was a little bit ridiculous? Martin Mulligan makes a fair point in the chat. He says, if Cameron did that to Whitaker, would the ref have stopped it? I don't know. Fair question.
No, he wouldn't have. But I'm kind of in the camp of, I think I called the knockout. I remember saying it on the group. I called it after the end of the first round, the way Cameron walked back to his corner. Because like Des said, this was, he was still doing a little bit of his showboating, but Whitaker was actually sitting on his shots. He hasn't done that in his first 8 fights. He doesn't really sit on his shots that much. And he actually did that in the first round. And just Cameron's body language going back to the corner, I knew the knockout was coming. I knew that was going to happen. I know a lot of people, in the group, and I think last week we're giving Cameron a chance. I never thought Cameron had a chance at all. I just knew what this was going to set up to be. That Cameron was going to, you can say however you say it was going to happen, but I knew this fight was set up for Whitaker to win, to look good. And then the stoppage, he was hurt. So the referee is in there. We're not. This wasn't like a flash thing or, he kind of stumbled. You could tell Cameron was hurt. He wasn't like, they just put it on him and he quit. But he was getting ready to get knocked out, like Des said. It was coming. He took 5 or 6 shots in a row and wasn't throwing anything back and was laying in the corner. I can't blame the ref for stopping it. Was it a little early? Yes. We've seen like a Steve Smoger would have let it go for another 5 rounds. And the old different guys would have let it go longer, but it could have gone maybe 30 seconds longer, but I think that would just be, delaying the inevitable. I think Whitaker was going to get him. Cameron made his money. And my thing was, and Des already said it, by a fighter's reaction what he thought. Cameron didn't say hardly shit. He wasn't his corner didn't go running around the ring. Cameron wasn't throwing his arms up in the air and, going over to the judges and yelling at the officials. And he was just cool. He was smiling. He made his money. It was as soon as the knockout, it was about a minute later, he would just stand over there holding people's hands, looking around. He wasn't too fussed about it. I think he knew he got caught with a shot. He was, it wasn't an egregious. I think some people got really excited about it, thought it was one of the worst they've ever seen. It wasn't the worst I've ever seen, obviously. It was early, but not I think where people could have been upset is, you remember when he hit that shot and Cameron kind of started doing the shaky legs? That would have been early. But Cameron took 6 shots in a row and wasn't doing anything.
I thought they were off the gloves.
Yeah, but if you're sitting there just leaned in the corner and you're giving the referee, you're giving him the opportunity to stop it. You are,
but I feel like if that happens in the 8th or 9th round, it's different than happening in the 2nd round.
Yeah, you're right. He could have Cameron. I do truly believe Cameron would have went a little bit longer, maybe, but he wouldn't have. Maybe I don't know if he'd have finished the round. I don't know. You were just. We can sit here and say conspiracy all we want to. The ref, he knew what his job was. He's not stupid. They're not. I do agree with what the guy said. If it would have been Whitaker, he would not have jumped in that quick. You could take that for whatever you want to take it. I hate to be these guys that say everything's corrupt, but you can say whatever you want to say. I think Whitaker would have got a longer leash than Cameron did. And that's just.
Can I just say something there, Justin? Yeah. This is all about in-fight management as well. There has to be a level of ring IQ with the fighter. So, for example, at the rules meeting, when you're made aware of who the referee is going to be, you have a conversation with your trainer, and they say things like, "Now, if you do get buzzed, either take a knee or grab hold, but don't lay on the ropes. Don't unanswer 6 or 7 because he can't wait to jump in." You have them conversations with people. You mentioned Steve Smoker. If he was your referee, you could say to Steve, "Now you can respect our kid, and we respect you. You know, don't jump in too soon, Steve, because we want." And you know, we get it. But I think it was Howard Foster last night, wasn't it? Was it Howard Foster?
I think so, yeah.
It was. So with Howard Foster, you kind of have the conversation with your fighter. If you get buzzed, give that round away. Take the knee. Have a breather. Have a blow. Then go for a walk. And if you have to hold. But what Liam done last night, you know, when you consider Liam's had something like, 23, 24. I think he's had 23 or 24 wins. He's probably had a 30-fight career. And I know he's had a layoff, but he should have known in that situation, either take the knee or just hold and spoil. Let's just get through that moment in time. He never did that. And what he did, I thought it was a bit premature. I think we all agree it was a bit premature. But what Liam did, he didn't help himself, and he gave the referee every opportunity to call that. And that's what happened.
Yeah, if you don't throw back and you kind of lean against the ropes, you're telling him, hey, you're giving the body language that you're not in it. And so, yes, you're giving them a chance to say, hey, I'm coming in. And Foster you could tell he was leaning. Like he was wanting to jump in as soon as Cameron went to the corner.
Exactly.
He wanted in to stop it.
But hold on, like at the same time, hold on. If you're talking like old pro veteran tactics and things like that, if you're going to put a stoppage on the table when the guy is taking probably 80% of the shots off the gloves during an onslaught after a good clean punch that buzzed him, aren't you taking away the veteran tactic of letting the young guy at moments blow his load so that you can ultimately take him into deep waters and take him out down the stretch?
No, totally, and I understand that, but I don't think he was stopped because of the buzz. I think he was stopped because he was so many unanswered punches. So I don't think Foster stopped him. By the way, it was a premature stoppage for me. I thought the stoppage was coming, but I don't think it should have been stopped then. But I don't think Howard Foster stopped him because he got buzzed. He stopped him because the next phase was about 6 or 7 unanswered punches. And that's where Liam had to be cuter. Take the knee or claim him and hold him. Spoil it. Both fall over again. Do something. But don't sit against the ropes and give this referee, of all referees, an opportunity to say, I've seen enough.
Well, I know we hadn't got to it yet, but when we talk about the Grand Prix, that's early stoppages.
Oh, shit, yeah, I didn't get to watch that. Yeah, I'll give you guys a chance on that one, too.
Yeah, I think, like, every fight, if the guy, like, when Cameron got buzzed, they'd have stopped it. They stopped the fight for if the guy looked like he might be hurt. I mean, we'll get into that, but yeah, that was early stoppages. This was just, like we said, we're a broken record. Me and Des said the same thing. You give the referee a chance. Most referees will take that chance if you don't throw something back.
Yeah, I don't know. Matt, where are you standing on this one? I kind of feel when a guy's taking most of them off the gloves and it's early, you should let it go a while. Like, I think, there was a handful of clean punches in there, but the bulk were at least partially blocked, if not fully blocked. I didn't have a bet on this fight. Like, I have no emotional, attachment to this outcome whatsoever. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, Marty, I think when I look at it, I tend to agree more with you. And look, I think I agree with Justin that it was only going one way. And I suppose I'll start, if I may, with the performance of Whitaker. Whitaker came out and was a much different beast than he was in the previous fight. He had purpose, he had spite, he had precision. He was loading up on his, he was loading up on his punches, sitting on his shots. It's early, but it looks like he made improvements with the Andy Lee.
Oh, we lost you there for a second. I don't know if you're.
Let's talk about the stoppage. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. You're back and good and clean.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Just let me know if I drop out or anything.
Will do.
So, yeah. So let's talk about the stoppage. So Whitaker lands a peach of a right hand on Cameron, and it gives Cameron a bit of the stanky legs. He goes into the ropes. He's got his guard up high though, and all the shots that are coming in from Whitaker, for the most part, are landing on the guard. And to me, when you're looking to stop a fight, what you've got to look at is whether or not the fighter is intelligently defended himself. Like you said before, Matty, you can have fighters with the veteran tactics just slipping and sliding on the ropes, maybe not firing back, but defending the shots, catching it all on the guard. They're still in the fight, but they may not be throwing back. So when I hear this narrative about the 15 unanswered shots, I sort of think that it's a bit disingenuous when you say that, because really 3 or 4, maybe 5 shots actually got through and landed on him. And, he's there. He's definitely hurt, don't get me wrong, but he's intelligently defending himself. It's the second round. You've got most of the fight to go yet, and there's not a risk of serious injury to Cameron if the fight is allowed to go on. If anything was going to happen, I think someone in the chat said it earlier, if anything was going to happen, then you should give him a count. There's a point when he's on the ropes where his knees sort of buckle, and you can sort of see the ropes allow him to stay upright. Technically, letter of the law, that's a knockdown. So he should have been given the knockdown, give him the 8 count, allow him to come back to his senses. Whitaker will go to a neutral corner, fight resets. And, after that point, if there's still unanswered shots being taken by Cameron, stop the fight any day of the week. But I think the fact that there's still that ambiguity.
Matty, that's a good point. Matty, that's a really good point. When he sagged and the ropes held him up, that was Foster's opportunity to say, 1, 2, send Whitaker to a neutral corner and administer a count. That's what he should have done. But not for the first time. We've seen referees caught in the spotlight and don't know how to react. And what they do, Matt, they overkill it. They just cover their ass and blanket rule it. He should have done exactly what you said. He should have given him a count when he sagged and the ropes held him up. That was his opportunity, but he missed it.
Yeah. But what I will say, Des, to your point, Cameron should have known about Foster as well. We all know Howard Foster in this chat.
They would have had the conversation, Matt. I promise you. In the changing room, they would have had the conversation, mate.
He's got previous for this, hasn't he? We only have to look as far back as Froch Groves. He's got previous for jumping in like this. So as soon as he got back on those ropes, I agree with you, Des. That just even a single shot being thrown by him, I think that would have been enough just to keep him on the edge and maybe in the fight. But like I say, I do agree. I think it's an early stoppage. And I was a bit annoyed by the commentary after the fight. I think a bit more annoyed than maybe most people here, by how the comms were defending it, about how the comms were saying, oh, well, he's taking all these shots, etc. It's a bad stoppage. We should be honest and say it's a bad stoppage. But like I say, the writing was on the wall. And, even if it were allowed to continue after an 8 count, it probably would have gone Whitaker's way. So, overall, I'm just happy that it's over and done with. We're not having to look at a third fight. And Whitaker moves on, and hopefully there'll be a bigger fight for him, and we don't have to mess about with him anymore.
Mate, did you see that video that I put up in the chat where Ben Shalom's come pulled Dave Caldwell while he was being interviewed? Have you seen that video?
I have not seen that. No.
So basically, Dave Caldwell's talking to someone with a camera. And Ben Shalom comes up and says, why'd you give us a hard time in comms, bloody, bloody, blah. And Dave's now got to defend himself. And Ben is just dismisses him and just looks at his phone and walks away while Dave's like a bumbling prat. But that tells us the relationship, Matt, of the promoter interlinked with the broadcaster too deep, and how the people on commentary are self-serving. They have to speak rightly of the promoter. They have to say the right thing. They have to promote them, because if they go against them, they get what we saw. We got a glimpse of it on that video. The promoter comes and sees you, and that's all wrong. That's really wrong. But so I agree with you, Matt Butters.
That's why I like
Butters.
Like the announcers,
the promoter shouldn't be saying to anyone, why did you do this or why didn't you do that? And the commentary team should have a conversation. I think it was a bit premature. We've all been involved in boxing for like 25, 30 years. That's an early call, but no one ever says that. And you saw a glimpse of why in that video, Butters, because the promoter who's interlinked with an exclusive deal with a network will come and speak to you. It's all wrong, that is.
It was a proper pathetic video as well, wasn't it? The way Ben sort of sidled up to Codewell, you know, and Ben doesn't even get the right to say those sort of things because he's not been in the business for that long. He's been in the business for all of 3-4 years. So to get that sort of, yeah. Well, if Whitaker loses, who's he got left?
That's exactly. That's why he ran into the ring and looked stupid and acted the way he did, because he has Whitaker, and that's, like you said, that is it. If Whitaker had lost, I mean, where does he go? He might as well just quit. Sky has that's all they have is Whitaker, basically. So it's like, yeah, that's why he acted like a fool, which he's a fool anyway. But that's why he ran in and was so excited, because he knows his job just lasted a little bit longer.
But Justin, years ago, when Harry Carpenter or Reg Guttridge or Jim Watt, when they worked exclusively for the broadcaster, and the broadcaster used to put on events by a multitude of different promoters, depending on who had what, that's when you had a lot more subjectivity. You had community commentary teams that were very independent, and they worked for the broadcaster. Well, now it's different. The broadcaster and the promoter have an exclusive deal. They're in bed together. So now they pick who's on commentary. So the commentary team now, they're tiptoeing around it. They're walking on eggshells all the time. And that's why boxing commentary is nothing like what we see in, say, football commentary. I mean, if you can compare the way what we see Johnny Nelson and Dave Caldwell and these type of guys and Matt Macklin, how they talk about boxers on Sky, compare that to how Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher and Floyd Hasselbank talk about footballers they see on Sky as well. It's night and day, because with a football setup, one, they're all financially secure, and two, they're brought in by the broadcaster, not by the football teams or the managers. This is a bit different. And until we stop this exclusive deal where broadcasters and promoters have exclusive arrangements, we're always going to see this. So we're always going to get fed a line, and commentary teams are always going to be given scripts to read from, and we're not going to get any subjectivity in boxing or objectivity in boxing that we want to see.
Yeah, it's a shame we'll never see anything like an exchange between like Larry Merchant and Floyd Mayweather again, because everyone is just they have the same vested interest, and they're all committed to achieving that particular outcome. It's kind of
Matty, sorry to interrupt you, mate. I've said this a few times. Go and watch, if anyone wants to go and watch Crawford Ashley versus Michael Nunn. And Crawford went out to America, and Crawford was like a European champion and a world level fighter. And he was fighting Michael Nunn, who was on his way to the Hall of Fame and an outstanding fighter who come through that 84 Olympic cycle and never got on the team, but was on the bench with Mike Tyson and various other great fighters. I think it was Reg Guttridge who says in commentary, and I think he's speaking to Jim Watt, it might be Jim Watt, and they're so open and honest. It was, we know how good Crawford is, we like Crawford, but this is a big one, and he might have bitten off more than he can chew. And as the fight's going on, them guys are talking like real boxing people with great knowledge, because our eyes don't lie to us. And what we have now is almost like we have this being treated like idiots, like morons. That, you know, we're almost being pandered to by a commentary team who's been given a script. You must sell this fighter to the public. You mustn't talk about his flaws. You mustn't talk about what he's not good at. And anything you see that is a positive, magnify it, illuminate it, you know, oversell it, treat the public like wallies. And that's you know, pretty much every time we have a boxing show now, we spend so much time, or the boxing fans spend so much time talking about the commentary team or the broadcast team or what was said and what wasn't said. And that's a shame, because a commentary team should be informative and knowledgeable. We don't seem to allow our guys to be that.
Yeah, the lines have gotten just a bit too blurry, but I think part of the reason why they do it that way anymore is because they've come to the conclusion that, we, the real, fans of the sport, are, there's not enough of us necessarily to fill stadiums and things like that. And we know our stuff enough that we're going to have our own narrative on these things, our own commentary on what's happening. So rather than try to win us over because they know we know enough to not be bullshitted, they're just going to try to appeal to the people that are casual fans and don't know any better. And if they can get them to hop aboard these hype trains, then they can sell tickets, they can sell subscriptions, they can sell pay-per-views, and they all win because of it. We the hardcore boxing fans, we've got we know oftentimes more than the commentators. So I don't know. We'll see how this ongoing battle between the people and the commentators develops over time. Let's see here. Half hour on Whitaker. We'll move on. Let's see here. Fraser Clarke getting first round stoppage over Ebenezer Tete, as was discussed earlier. Tete going down and then complaining about the stoppage. Clarke, nice to see him just in one round, get in there, get out against a guy who, had a decent name. His record of 23-2 was built it's basically nobody's, but he'd been in there with some names. What were your thoughts on this fight there, Matt? Do you think a round is probably, again, I mean, 1 round, 2 round, it's just not enough information to know where somebody's at. I mean, it's nice to see Clarke get a W, but we don't know any more about him than we did a week ago, did we? Matt, or did you go? Did you have to jump off? Nope. Are you on? You're unmuted. I don't know why I can't hear you. I have no idea why I can't hear you. Why don't you jump off and jump back on? Oh, right there. Yeah, why don't you jump off and jump back on real quick? I don't know if you had a technical problem there. Justin, go ahead and grab that.
I guess he's upset about Tete getting stopped. No, the only surprise for me in this fight was that Tete didn't go longer. I guess that shows how washed White is. But no, Clarke is what he is. He's going nowhere. I mean, this like you said, this is nothing. I mean, he's going to go nowhere. I don't see any. You put Clarke versus anybody half decent, he's going to get stopped. He's just blah. I mean, there's nothing fancy about him. There's nothing he does that well. He's just your basic solid guy, but he's never going to do anything. And I think the only reason he's getting the push is because, once again, it's all Sky has. If he was I don't think he'd be getting this push if he was with a lot of other promoters, but they really don't have no choice. They brought him into the ring with Whitaker after the fight, made it look like, here's our two. People keep forgetting though that Clarke's 45 years old. I mean, he's like, what is he, late 30s? 37,
That's a good
36?
question. No, you think he was 30,
35,
maybe?
something like that.
I don't know. Good question, actually. I'll have to go look at that real quick.
But they're acting like, he's not like a young pro, because he was one of those guys that did the full cycle. Like, he was in the amateurs maybe too long. Probably, remember we had that, you asked us about that the Joyce question, can you be in the amateurs too long? Clarke's probably one of those guys.
He's only 33, Justin. He's only 33.
Okay. He's one of those guys. I don't see the point of heavyweights being in the amateurs a drastic amount of time. But, yeah, he was one of those guys that probably could have come out a little bit earlier. But he might win I think he's definitely just the British level. And this was just whatever. I think Tete was upset about the stoppage, but it was another one of those inevitable things. Good thing about Tete is, though, he'll be back. I mean, he's going to be one of those guys that we're going to keep seeing out there because people know that you're going to beat him, and they know that, and they know enough casual people know who he is. So we'll see Ebenezer again, but yeah, Clarke he just is what he is. I don't really care to watch him fight.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that they're doing anything more than trying to get him back in the winning column so that they can potentially feed him to an up and coming heavyweight. What are your thoughts on that, Matt? Let's check that sound.
Hell yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Perfect.
All right, perfect. For some reason, it worked perfectly earlier, but my laptop decided that it was just going to completely change my entire settings for the audio in between me speaking last. So sorry about that. But anyway, yeah, Fraser Clarke. I think that one round probably wasn't enough for him, especially after the demolition job that happened last time. And look, Fraser's come out and he's been really candid and really honest about it. And, you know, he's a class act, is Fraser. And he's probably one of the better guys in boxing. Almost in a sense, he's too nice for boxing because he just doesn't have that killer instinct, it seems, that, you know, other guys have. That Fabio Wardley has that edge of nastiness about him that translates into his boxing that, you know, Fraser Clarke doesn't have. But last night was it was definitely a relief. I'm sure it blew off the cobwebs. It allowed him to, you know, get a statement stoppage. And I'm sure, you know, Ben Schlom will like that because that's the way for him to continue marketing him. Like Justin just said, having up there with Ben Whitaker as sort of his two main guys. But like I say, it's just not enough. Really is just not enough. And, you know, at the age that Fraser's at right now, you know, 33, he's getting up there. You know, it's not going to be long left if he wants to have a title run. So I was sort of thinking that if he really, really, really does want to push for a world title, it's going to be hard for him now, especially after such a bad loss. But if he does want to push for a world title, I think he's going to have to be in a position to challenge for the British either by the end of this year. He's either got to have fought for a British title or have one booked in his diary, because he needs to move quick now. And, you know, these sort of rebuilding processes, you can't spend forever having a rebuilding process. He's got to fight often, but also fight big as well. So, you know, they were talking about the winner of that Adelaide Jamie TKB rematch. Sounds good to me. You know, anyone sort of in or around that level, I think, you know, Fraser just needs to take care of them. Does he have what it takes to beat them? Well, I think he's got to believe that if he wants to succeed, because if he can't beat British, let's be honest, if he can't beat British, he's not beating European, he's not beating worlds. So, you know, and he wanted to fulfill that potential that he believed he had when he came from the Olympics and came into the pros. So, you know, do we really find out anything new about Clarke from this? I don't think so. But I suppose the one thing we know is at the very least the cobwebs have been taken off him. So hopefully that's something to push him on. And I want to see him fight a couple more times this year, like I say.
Yeah, it's I just wonder where they're going to take him, if he's going to be used for somebody else to build a name, or if they still want to build his name. What are your thoughts on that, Des?
I think he's very similar. This is clearly a model that Boxer have gone down with their big signings, and Whitaker and Clarke both come out of the Olympics with medals, and they've treated them the same way, almost identically, really. Fraser's been a pro for over 3 years now, and he's 11 fights in, 9-1 and 1. And we still haven't seen much from Fraser, but I'll come to what we have seen. But in terms of where does Fraser go, we have to remember the trauma he's undergone. And this is a kid that spent 10 years in an elite institute of sport. And I'm not quite sure anyone can show me an example of a top fighter that spent 10 years being mollycoddled in an institute of sport. It's a bit too soft, and I think it softens fighters up. I think it gives them a little bit of it panders to a soft culture, and you almost
that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying, that sometimes you stay too long, and I think that's what hurts you if you stay too long.
I agree, mate, and I just think that I think you can have these Lomachenko type careers, Usyk type careers, but they're doing it out in Eastern Europe, in the Ukraine or in Russia, and I've got no problem with them guys. I think they've sussed it. But over here, perhaps in certain parts of Europe, where being a member of an elite institution of sport means you've never got to pay for any clothes or trainers or sportswear. You've never got to pay for any medical advice or injury treatment. You've never got to pay for any accommodation. In fact, we'll give you a car and we'll give you somewhere to live and we're going to give you a wage every week. I just think, wow, yeah, I'm not quite sure that breeds the type of kid we need to be successful in professional boxing. And I think it was Justin that said, it might have been Matt Butters, that he made a contrast between Wardley and Clarke. And remember this, if Wardley loses on the way up, he's got nowhere to go. Like, he literally has to go and get a job Monday morning. If Clarke loses, well, then he sits back down with the promoter and they find a way back. And that's probably what softens you up. It's that mentality. It's that type of choices you've made. And that's not Fraser's fault. It's just the condition we have where someone said we need to start getting medals at major tournaments. So how we'll do it is we're going to sort of institutionalize and systemize these young boxers for 8, 9, 10 years, an Olympic cycle, maybe 2, maybe more. And then once they get a medal, it keeps us in jobs. Then we can release them to the pro game. But by the time the pro game gets them, we're probably getting the very worst version of what they ever could have been. Now,
wasn't Paddy Barnes a perfect example of that? The guy that stayed a long time.
Right, so I think Paddy Barnes and what's the other one that was out in America? It comes from Cincinnati. No, it comes from Cincinnati. Rashi O'Shea. I can't see his face.
Rushy Warren.
Rushy Warren.
Yeah, Rushy Warren. Like this,
way too long in the amateur.
Three Olympic cycles. And by the time, but don't forget this. Look at the weight making them guys have to do over tournaments where they're fighting 3 or 4 times in a week. Them guys go to bed in plastic suits. Them guys have to sit in saunas and suck ice cubes. By the time you get to the pros, you're done. You're cooked. But I get it. I understand the lifestyle. I understand going around the world first class.
Well, they go to bed in plastic clothing?
They go to bed in plastic clothing because they have to weigh in the next day.
Wouldn't it be awful if they had to do that and they were also incontinent? What a terrible combination of events.
Yeah. Right. So going back to Fraser Clarke, there would have been a conversation, or there should have been a conversation at Boxer. Someone there with the brains would have said, Fraser needs rounds. Matt Butters touched on it, or Justin touched on it. Fraser needs rounds. So we're going to bring in Tete. Tete's durable. He's a lump. He's going to offer something. He shouldn't beat Fraser, but he's going to offer something. And Fraser needs 4 or 5 rounds. But again, the referee never read the memo. And we had another sort of semi-early stoppage. I thought the referee was a bit too soon in that one as well. But where does Fraser go? I can't emphasize this enough. I know it's a boring subject. Everyone talks about Fabio Wardley's second fight. That's not really when the damage was done. Fighters can get over broken jaws. The damage was done in the first one, when he had a life and death with a white collar fighter who really meant it. And at the final bell, Fraser collapsed and needed gas and air. That's when the damage was done. And what we saw in the second fight was just that 13th round. Fraser was cooked. So what we're going to get from Fraser Clarke now, I don't know. Has he rehabilitated? Has he had a mental rethink? Has he had a rejig upstairs? Has he changed anything? We've not seen it. We had half a round with Ebenezer Tete. What I do know about Fraser Clarke is he needs to be more active. He needs to have a little bit more spite about him. He needs to box with a bit more purpose. I'm not talking about last night because we didn't see nothing of him last night. It wasn't a fight to judge. But if you're that good, Fraser, if you mean it that much, let's stop this 3 fights a year. Let's stop this, 1 fight on, 3 months off. Let's stop all that. And you've got guys like Nick Webb, Solly Dakers, Johnny Fisher, all knocking about at a level perceivably lower than yours. You've got David Adelaide as a British champion. You've got Jamie TKV, who's just been beat by David Adelaide. And I tell you what, why not fight Joe Joyce? Why not fight Hughie Fury? Hughie Fury needs a fight. And Hughie Fury's been a pro now since the old King died. He's probably had 30-odd bouts. So, like they threw Sanchez in with Caballero, like they threw Anderson in with Bacoli, I tell you what, the people behind Hughie Fury, give Boxer a call. You've worked with him in recent years. Say, can we put Hughie in with Fraser? And whoever doesn't fancy that, they've got no chance. Because that's a winnable fight for both of them. And it's a fight I'd watch. I'm not saying to watch it because it's a good fight stylistically, but there's an intrigue to it. That people like Fraser Clarke, Ben Whitaker, you've shown you're talented. You've shown you know how to win things. Now, transfer that to the pros. Step up. Be active and be dangerous. And show us in the next 18 months you can get there. I think it's going to be hard for Fraser because I don't think he's that kid. And the guys I've just mentioned there, Webb, Adelaide, Dakers, Fisher, Huey, they're the bottom of the barrel. You've got people like Fabio Waldie, and above him, you've got Moses Atoma, and above him, you've got Usyk and that little gang. So I don't know where Fraser goes, but if I had to give him some advice, I'd say get busy and start having fights that put the fear of God in you, because then we'll see the best of you.
Yeah, I don't know where he goes from here. I just it just feels like he's going to end up with a few good wins, but he's going to end up living the life of a trial horse at the end of the day. And there's going to be some guys who are up and coming who are going to get some W's over him on their resumes before they call it a day. Now, a little, I don't know where the odds were on this one. But apparently Lee Cutler and Sam Edgington had a pretty good fight. And, of course, it was a Sam Edgington fight, so there was a cut, and it went to a technical decision. Sam getting the right side of this one. And it was apparently a relatively close fight, a good test for a young fighter. But the old vet clearly just had just a smidge a bit more than he could handle, at least with the judges. Where were you leaning on this fight, Justin? Who do you think picked it off?
I think Edgington won. That's who I thought won. I mean, his face didn't look like he won. I remember
it never does.
No, it was funny because I was watching the fight and my brother come over and he said, "Well, God," he said, "why are they interviewing the guy that lost?" And I was like, "He didn't lose." I'm like, "It's just because I think both eyes were cut, but that's just what he does." But I think, like you said, I think it was just his experience. He kind of had, Edgington's been through about everything you can go through, and he just worked his way through that fight. He landed some really good counter shots. I think he landed the cleaner stuff. Cutler, really couldn't really hurt him. So Edgington just kind of old manned him a little bit. He's been around. He had all the little tricks. I think he scraped it. The fight probably went longer than a lot of people thought it would because those cuts were pretty rough over both of his eyes. His nose looked like it was broke. Everything was swelling up. But I thought maybe they would give it a draw because they only went like 7.5 rounds. But yeah, Edgington won, and he'll get another payday. I don't know where he won some kind of some kind of WBA, some kind of
WBC silver or international.
Yeah,
silver
something. So he'll get a payday. Edgington is fun to watch. He's always been entertaining. He's a certain level. So I hope they don't try. For him, if he gets a good payday, it's probably going to be versus a guy that he'll lose. But he's earned it. I don't think he shouldn't really look to go up too high of a level because Cutler did do some damage. But Edgington is fun to watch. He always has been. He's one of those, what they call them, the honest pros. It's like what he's going to get. You could tell that he puts the work in. He's not going to show up and just take a paycheck. And those are the guys that we always like, especially on here. These are the guys that that they're going to give it and that they love boxing and that they enjoy it. He was sitting there, had a big smile on his face, and his face had to hurt. But he was having a great time, and I always enjoy Edgington. Cutler, you'd have to say you don't know. This is not trying to knock Edgington, but you don't really know where Cutler's going to go from here because if you can't beat an older Edgington, and he took a lot of shots, and I don't know where he stands. I'm sure there's more level fights, area fights for him around here, but he might have found his level. I think Edgington is a good level finder. If you lose to Edgington, doesn't mean you're bad, but if you want to go any higher, you should beat him. One of those guys. So, but it was fun. I don't think they'll do it again. I don't think Edgington, there's no reason for him to want to rematch it. He won. And in this stage of his career, that's kind of going backwards to rematch Cutler. So I think Edgington will definitely move on Cutler. He'll just have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and he just might find himself bumping around the domestic scene. I mean, he didn't lose to a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination. Rob Kelly is also with us. Rob, I'll get to you in a second here. But let's see here. Matt, now, Sam is good bang good bang for your buck, and he is a really honest pro.
Oh, yeah.
But it's one of those things. It's he's still getting wins, but his face is getting messed up. He's just got to be one big piece of scar tissue at this point in time. It's kind of a question of where do you think he goes next, and how much longer do you think he can ride this train?
Yeah, it's God. His face looked awful last night, didn't he? He looks like Rihanna after Chris Brown. But it's he's got a lot of scar tissue on him, does Sam, and like Justin said, I think it's the same old story of we have a fight with Edgington, he gets cut. It's sort of same old, but the guy's only, was he 31, 32 years old? Like, he feels like he's been around forever. Definitely a lot of miles on the clock, but actually he's still quite young. He could probably stick around for quite a while. But like Justin said, he is of a level, probably floating around that British, European sort of area. He's the guy who you bring in when you want to test your prospects against that next level. They've done British. What's that next level for you? And I think Sam Edgington is one of those people you bring in to test them about that. So he's definitely got a lot of paydays. I think he's definitely a guy who will test the prospects and will 50% of the time beat them, 50% of the time get beaten himself, and he won't mind that because he loves a good scrap and he knows where his levels are. Edgington's not stupid. He knows what his level is. And the hope is that he's just got himself some good people around him. He's got himself a good financial advisor. He'll tell him where to put his money. So I honestly think Edgington's got a really good future. He's not going to win any titles, don't get me wrong, but he'll be a really good foil for a prospect or some sort of international opponent where he'll get some good money, but he'll put it away for his future. So, I think, he won tonight and last night, sorry, but that was mainly based off of the experience he had over Cutler. I'll to be honest with you, I just thought he sort of old man's Cutler in there. I thought he just had the more telling power, the more telling accuracy. I thought he won the inside game. I thought Cutler tried to make it a bit of a dirty fight at first. He came in with the head, but Edgington knew that game. He knew the way to shift and slide around him, and he started beating him at his own game on the inside, and he started piling up rounds. And by the 8th round, the 9th round is when the doctor actually called it, but the 8th round is when it became apparent that this was going to get stopped sooner rather than later. I think Edgington had built up way too much of a lead. I actually thought Cutler won the 8th round and was probably starting to come in. It was probably his best round, that 8th round. So, had it have gone 9 and 10, maybe we'd be having a different story. I don't know. But like Justin said, I don't want a rematch. I think they both need to go off in different directions now. Edgington can get himself a payday. That'll definitely have risen up his stock. And Cutler needs to go back to, picking off English level opposition. I think maybe work himself into a British title contest. I don't know, but I think that's where his level stands right now.
Don't go talking about picking off the English, or you'll get Rob all excited.
Well, yeah, I think, the less said about that, the better, I think.
Sorry for derailing you there. A door briefly opened there, and I'm like, I'm going to just walk in here.
I think the more ways, the less said about the Irish and the English, the better, I think, Matty. But yeah, Sam Edgington moves on. Cutler goes back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and let's see here. Let me go to Rob here. Rob, we have just discussed Whitaker down to Edgington and Cutler. So anything that you have to say about those fights that you saw in your Easter Sunday instead of spending time with loved ones, please go ahead and share your thoughts.
You know, Edgington and Cutler was a bit of Sambuglione on a Saturday night. Like, I wasn't going to fucking tune in for that one. I'm kind of sorry I didn't know because I heard it was a right good scrap. Like, but I did see the main event, so I'll probably take it there. Like, I said last week I thought Whitaker was going to knock Cameron out. Like, I just thought that with the new trainer and everything that they were going to focus on getting him to sit down on the shots a little bit much more than previously. I didn't think he was going to change his style too much. And I just think last night I thought the occasion suited Whitaker a little bit better. Obviously, there was question marks over how he did the weight and everything the first time. He maybe wasn't applying himself. He was a little bit dead on the scales. And everything went against him in the first fight. And Cameron took advantage of that and grasped his moment and started to grow into the fight and make it really, really difficult for Whitaker. And we don't know what happened afterwards. We all question it. Did he jack it? What happened? So there's a lot of question marks over Ben Whitaker, a lot of pressure on him, a lot of stuff he had to answer. We've talked about for forever how high his ceiling could be in terms of star power for boxing, in terms of, you know, big British draw, the next domestic star, but he had to back it up and keep winning. And I think he looked the more relaxed of the two. I think the occasion got to Cameron a little bit more than it did to Whitaker. I think Cameron looked a bit edgy. He looked like he wasn't going to throw as much. It just looked a little bit spooked from the off, and Whitaker just was nice and relaxed, sitting in front of him, and started to throw a little bit more straight shots, caught him down the pipe. I think the shot he caught him with was a beauty. And he was buzzed, and I've no real problem with the stoppage, to be honest with you. Looking at it in real time, I thought maybe it's a little bit early, but you could see he was gone. His legs were stiff, his eyes were rolling, he was sagging in the corner. I know a lot of people online were questioning the stoppage, even on the comms. Macklin and a few others were really questioning it at the start, but I've no problem with that stoppage. I think if the fight goes on for another 10 seconds, it's more definitive for Whitaker, but I think Edgington was gone. He wasn't thrown back, and he didn't really complain after the fact either. The stuff after with Whitaker, did he space? He's probably a little, he's not a likable guy. Like, is he really? He hasn't got the likable persona of a fighter that you really root for or anything, but I think people tune in to see him get beat a little bit, and that's part of his appeal. He has to kind of embrace that, I think, going forward. But my opinion on it was that it was a very, very good shot that caught him in the first place. And I don't think Edgington, I don't think Cameron was going to recover. So Whitaker did the job. It's probably a pity for him that he stuck his neck out the ring and started giving it a bit of fucking shush burger to the guy in the corner. Like, I thought that was a bit. It probably made a different talking point of the fight where he should have been having his moment of redemption. Kind of got the knockout, got the stoppage, and he should have been. The talk should have all been about that. And then he went and stuck his fucking head out of the ring, and immediately then there's a kind of pile-on with him. Caldwell is fucking saying it's a disgrace, and the interviewer, Andy Scott, he was pressing him about it in the aftermath. It wasn't a great look for him, but he's only a baby, like, isn't he? I'm not still a part of his fan club or anything. I just think he do last night. He got rid of the guy early, and that should have been him answering the critics. But again, it makes it odd for his own back, and has everybody talking about something else when they should have been talking about the stoppage. I didn't think it was really that controversial. I just thought it was he caught him and it was good night, Irene. But he jumped on him as well, so you got to give him that. He jumped on him when he had him hurt. So. But yeah, it was a good fight. It's a pity it didn't go a little bit longer.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think it should have. Lots of shots off the gloves, and as Mr. Butters made a good point that with him sagging into the ropes, you could have called that a knockdown technically and given him a count. So it's I don't know,
Yeah, I
but
think that likely more happens when you get when you get buzzed and then you kind of your legs you go backwards across the ring and then the ropes like visibly hold you up. I don't think your first shot kind of spun him around the middle of the ring and then he naturally retreated back to the ropes and then Whitaker was teeing off. I think it was only a matter of time. Honestly, I do. I don't think it was like it wasn't corruption or fucking robbery or anything like that. I just think the ref erred on the side of caution, like, and stopped the fight. Like,
someone in the chat asked a good question though, and this is something interesting because I generally agree probably would have happened later on down the line. But had the roles been reversed, do you think the referee would have stopped the fight? That was a very interesting way to pose that question. On
good
if
question,
it was
yeah.
a stoppage.
Maybe not. Like, but we've seen fucking house fighters get protected since the beginning of time. Like, we've seen house fight, but I don't think because he was. I get that point, but I don't think in this instance, the way he caught him so clean, it was a whopper that he caught him with the first right hand, and then when he went back, I just say every time I look at it in slow motion, I'm thinking that's the times you have to jump in there. Like, but
I think Rob. Sorry, sorry to interrupt. I think Rob, the main reason why people are talking about this stoppage is because sort of what's around Whitaker, you know, the sort of the showboating, the arrogance, the cockiness of what obviously happened after the fight as well. That's sort of obviously all sort of part of the fight as well. And you know, obviously he stopped the fight, ran over to Grant Smith, had words with him, nearly got a smack for his trouble, and he's, you know, everyone's sort of defending him for that afterwards. And you know, I think the anger, the anger that people have towards him is not just the stoppage, but it sort of feeds into that. If you get me, it's all, you know, part of the same event. It's an early stoppage, and not only an early stoppage, but then he goes over and does the big one as well afterwards.
yeah, and I think he's already an unpopular guy. Like, he has that kind of aura about him that people tune in to want to see him get beat. And the whole of Twitter yesterday was giving Cameron a real shot in the fight. And I think Caldwell as well, especially, like, he don't like the guy. Like, does he? It was influencing his fucking. You can say it's a disgrace. He don't like him. Like, it was rubbing him up the wrong way because he don't like him. And I think that's a lot of people just don't like Whitaker. He was getting booed in the arena. He plays the pantomime villain, so he has to take that. But yeah, I didn't think it was like mad controversial. Like, I didn't think it was like Frost Groves level. Like, I know it's Howard Foster as well. I didn't think it was that level of stoppage, like, with that much on the line and stuff. You know, maybe if it's a world title fight or something, maybe he gives him a chance. Like, I just don't know. I just think he was protecting him. Like, but I want to see Whitaker now.
Right.
I want to see Whitaker in a big fight next. Like, I want to see Aziz, Lyndon Arthur. I think Aziz is probably easier made than Lyndon Arthur. Arthur's with Warren, isn't he?
Yeah, isn't he supposed to be fighting a rematch for the trilogy with Yard?
Yeah, Arthur is, isn't he? Yeah, supposed to be fighting. Yeah, the third time. So maybe the winner of that, like, that'd be a good mark to see, because we don't know really still how good Ben Whitaker is. We have to see it unfold now in front of us. But the only way you're going to see it is if they keep moving him along. He doesn't need, like, he's what, 9 fights. I know he's still only 9 fights, but he's been somewhat fast tracked because of his talent, his star power, his social media engagement. Those clicks are actually transferable into revenue, like, and that's why there's so much fuss about this guy. We'll have to see how good he is, but we're only going to see that, like, again, when he's in against higher level opponents. How it is.
All right, mate. Rob, this could all turn around because let's just say Lyndon Arthur goes and beats Anthony Yard, but Liam Cameron lost a split to Lyndon, and Whitaker has just stopped Cameron in 2. So if that does happen, then Cameron's back in the mix, and Whitaker is thrown right up there on the back of last night. If Lyndon Arthur goes and loses to Yard but fights really, really well, the same scenario occurs. I think the next 3-4 months could be really exciting for this light heavyweight crop. Don't forget Spider Richards is involved. Don't forget Willie Hutchinson's involved. Dan Aziz is there as well. Like, if we don't get these guys sorting it out in the next 12 to 18 months and have like some sort of round robin going on, it's been a real waste. And on the back of last night, the way Whitaker dealt with Cameron, the way Cameron fought against Lyndon, Lyndon's got to win over Yard. Yard's meant to be the top guy. This could all level off very quickly, and we could have a really good, exciting 12 months. But I agree with you, mate. They have to get going now. We have to see these fights.
I like
The only
what
thing
Ray
about it is,
said. Here's one to throw at you guys. Ray said Whitaker versus Joe Ward would be a good matchup, and I like that because Joe Ward, like, he lost so much time because of that injury, and he just needs something that'll fast track him and get him in the picture at this point. I like that fight a lot, Ray.
Joe is gone from Joey Gamachi as well, and being based in New York, he's back in Ireland, and I think he's fighting out of he's having camps, a lot of camps out in Spain. Young Dean Welch from Wexford is doing a lot of training with Ward at the moment, so I think he's based down in Waterford doing a lot of his training, which is only down the road for me. But yeah, that's a great fight. And Joe Ward to give Whitaker fucking problems, man. Don't think that's not going to be a straight up fight, straight up win for Whitaker. Ward can punch. He's very technically good. He would love that fight. I'm sure he needs it. Like, that'd be a great fight for Joe Ward. He'd obviously be coming in as an opponent, but he'd be able to put himself in the window for bigger fights for sure. That's a great one. The only thing about the Whitaker situation, you wouldn't really trust Ben Shalom based on his track record of delivering anything. He seems to be. No. We had high hopes for him when he first took over at Sky.
No.
And it seems to be one unmitigated disaster after another with him. Like,
the more we see of him, Rob, the worse he's getting.
Yeah, like even this issue in the week of the fight where it wasn't signed, where they basically issued contracts for a 12-rounder to Cameron and everything, like, and then pulled back on it. Just seems to have, like, even from a very basic fundamental perspective, things always seem to go wrong on the boxer card. Like, he's signed the wrong fighters to deals. He's poured money into the likes of fucking Buatsi. He's had this fucking. It's just one thing after another with him. Like, it's just constantly. Boxers just haven't delivered now. Boxers are in a difficult position because they come into a landscape on the biggest platform available on terrestrial television, and they basically have to make a stable out of what's left out of Queensbury and Matchroom, or the fighters that are disgruntled there and trying to bring them over. But when he has managed to bring them over, there hasn't seemed to be a contingency plan. Like, he made a big investment into Joe Parker at the start. That was kind of before Parker's turnaround or whatever as well. Like, you just question Ben Shalom so much, like, in what you see of him. I mean, we used to give Eddie absolute stick on this part. Oh my, Eddie used to get it down the banks. But if Eddie had fucking done half the things that Ben Shalom has done, we would have laid waste to him. Like, I think Shalom, because he hasn't actually made himself as relevant as the two big guys, he gets off the hook a little bit, but you wouldn't trust him fully to manage this the way we want to see it. You know that way?
Where did he come from? I mean, I guess I just know he showed up. But where did they get him? I always wonder. I'm sure Des might know. Where did they drag him out of? Because it's just almost like one day he was just there.
Yeah,
I don't know where he come from.
He was inserted into the Matrix. I think Rob and I.
Yeah, I'm saying it's like you never saw him in like other fights. It's just one day they were like, he's in charge.
Well, sometimes you can be in the right place at the right time. And what
he must have been behind the scenes and knew the right people. Yeah, I've never heard of him until this.
Well, they brought Ben Shalom in and Boxer to do this tournament on Sky, and it was almost like running parallel inside the Matchroom deal, but it wasn't. It had no effect on Matchroom's exclusive deal. It was just an add-on because they must have seen the writing on the wall with Eddie going to DAZN, so they wanted to just trial something. Then Eddie jumped ship to DAZN, and I think Sky thought, where do we go here? Boxing promoters are a funny breed. They're hard work. They don't often mix well with network bosses. Network bosses don't really get boxing. So I think someone like Eddie was a breath of fresh air 17 years ago. And I think Ben Shalom become a new breath of fresh air because he was easy to manage, easy to work with, easy to talk to. And it's exclusive deals now that networks seem to have with promoters means we've got as much control over the product as what you have. So you can't run away with it. But if you've got a very strong independent personality, like I say, a Frank Warren or a Mick Hennessy, these guys are very strong in character. They'll run off with ideas and you don't have much control. I think with Ben, you've got a lot of control. If I could just pick up on a point I made earlier, I don't have an issue with any boxer eyeballing the trainer or the other fighter and having Saints, a little bit of argy-bargy. I mean, we ain't got a problem with that because boxers and trainers and cutsmen, they all get each other. They operate in the same space. I've got a problem with promoters jumping in rings, eyeballing people, and getting the crowd at it. A promoter, behave yourself, conduct yourself properly. The more we see of Ben Shalom, the less we're starting to like. And Ben needs to work on that. He's not cut out for this life. He's not cut out for boxing promotion, but he's been given a wonderful opportunity. So try and buck the trend. Try and be a little bit different. Don't try and run with a pack. Be your own person. But let's not see no more of this calling people out, doing stupid videos, eyeballing trainers, getting the crowd at it in volatile situations. I don't want to see all that. I'm really sick and tired of promoters. They're doing more harm than good. Let's hear more from the fighters.
You know what's funny is the only promoter who like people still like, who puts himself into the spotlight and social media a whole lot, is Oscar De La Hoya. But that's Oscar De La
Different
Hoya,
kettle of fish.
a fighter. Yeah, he was a fighter, so he can live off of that, and do whatever, say whatever he wants. Everyone else is just like, you're just some twat with a bank account. Who fucking cares? Get back, like, give us the fights we want. James is also hopping on with us. James, why don't you give us the last word on that Whitaker card? I can't believe we've been talking about it for almost an hour and a half, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, Matty. I only just
fine.
saw it.
You're fine.
Yeah, so without trying to inflame the conversation for another hour, I'll just give you my take quickly. I thought that Whitaker looked really good, really sharp. I do think the stoppage was a touch premature. Ironically, Howard Foster, same referee as Froch Groves won. And I do think the stoppages were similar in that regard. I think if Ben was given, a couple of extra seconds, I think he probably would have dropped him. But then Cameron potentially could have recovered. It just hung a lot of questions out there for me. But the main takeaway from the main event was that Ben Whitaker, for me, is now firmly in Adrian Broner territory. I find him so unlikable, and I was absolutely gutted when he won the fight. But I suppose I'll be tuning in even more now to see someone put the screws to him, realistically. So yeah, that's briefly my take on it. A touch early, not too egregious. Whitaker actually looked really good, but he's like just classless for me.
Hey, that's how Mayweather become rich, because everybody watches pay-per-views to see him lose.
Yeah, exactly. So he's
That's
winning.
how he become rich, because everybody wanted him to lose so bad they kept watching.
Yeah, exactly. And his reaction to the win, I know I've seen videos of him crying in the press fight, post-fight press conference, but I'm not interested. Like he's one of those people who he just showed his true colours in a moment of high emotion, even though he made a point of coming out to a hymn or like a gospel choir and trying to portray himself in this righteous manner. When realistically, he's just as competitive and as nasty as some of the fighters who you would associate those characteristics with. And I think he might be potentially, he might get stuck in the AJ kind of dilemma, whereas he does have that nasty side, but he does want to be marketable. And yeah, it would be interesting and probably quite irritating to see how that plays out over the next couple of years. But he looked good, fair play to him, he looked really sharp. And I think him with Andy Lee, I think that's a perfect combination.
There you go. I like that. That was very concise. Thank you. All right. And just real quick, Des wanted to say something about Edgington, and then we're going to move on to Dalton Smith.
Yeah, just quickly about Sam Edgington. This is a real boxing podcast, and we respect boxers. And Sam is the most solid pro in boxing today. Sam is an honest pro. He's a 14-year pro who is still boxing on TV, still selling tickets, and still loved by his community. And when you think about, like, Lee Cutler last night got caught out by Sam Edgington. Lee Cutler's in really good company, because Johnny Garton got caught out, and Denton Vassell, Shane Singleton, Glenn Foote, Dale Evans, Frankie Gavin, they all got caught out. And when Ted Cheeseman beat Sam Edgington, he jumped in with Ashley Fairfane and caught Ashley out. And only a couple of fights ago, 20-0 with 19 knockouts, Joe Pickford got caught out by Sam Edgington. There should be a documentary about Sam Edgington. There should be a book written about Sam. And if anyone was going to get an MBE or an OBE in boxing today, it should be Sam Edgington. He comes across well-spoken, thoroughly likable. I'm not necessarily a Sam Edgington, the boxer fan, but I'm absolutely a Sam Edgington fan, and I just think he's got so much class. He's worked so hard to get the best out of his career, and I think if any pod's going to respect the Sam Edgingtons in boxing, it's probably the Asylum, and that's all I want to do now. Just give him all his respect.
Yeah, I got a lot of time for guys like that. Obviously they he's in line with like kind of like the Jesus Soto Carrasas of the world, and it's probably never have a world championship, but he's probably far more deserving than any number of people who have gotten the opportunity over the years. But yeah, hats off to Sam. And let's go over to the Dalton Smith at Jermaine card from Saturday. And that one, I had no opportunity to watch anything this week. I had a lot of crap going on. But in this one, you had Smith getting multiple knockdowns, but Jermaine still making it to the distance. I've seen Jermaine in a number of fights. He is a good fighter. He is a little bit hard to stop. But I got to tell you, Justin, I think that a performance like that, even without seeing it, it makes me feel like the ceiling becomes much more obvious with Dalton Smith.
Yeah, he definitely has a very low ceiling. I mean, I know.
Well, that you wouldn't say very low, but it might be below world championship level, right?
I mean, you're going to have a lot of people said, it's not his fault. Jermaine ran, and Jermaine did run. He ran the whole entire time, but I always hate when people use that excuse because they ain't at your job to stop him from running. That's the whole point. They teach you that when you first start boxing. You've got to learn how to cut the ring off. He just followed him the whole time. And Jermaine, I wouldn't even say Jermaine he's all decent, but if Smith is going to go somewhere, this was his hometown fight. He was the main event, and it was just a shitty fight. He couldn't cut him off. He couldn't get to him at times. He just amateurish at times. He was just kind of swinging. It wasn't really. Yeah. I mean, of course, Jermaine made it like that. I mean, it didn't help, but still, I think Dalton Smith, if he steps up another level, he's just going to get found out. I don't think he does anything particularly well. He's decent, but being decent, that doesn't equate to being a world champion or something. I mean, actually, in some divisions it can. Look at middleweight, but I don't think the ceiling's that high for Dalton Smith. Maybe somebody else will correct me and they think he can go somewhere and he can do something, but I think it's time. I think they need to cash out in a way. When I mean by cash out, I mean they need to get him in there. There's no point. There's no need for any more Jermaine fights or anything like that. He needs to just get on it and just see what's going to happen because I don't see him playing with any of the top guys at that division, any in the top 5, 6. He probably, I mean, I don't even know if he plays at the top of the British level with the top 1 or 2. I don't know where he's going to go. He's just kind of stuck because like I said, I don't know. I wasn't impressed. I didn't even watch most of it. I kind of had it in the background. I just kept keeping an eye on it because I figured he would knock him out a little bit earlier. I did not think it was going to go the whole distance. Jermaine, you can tell probably the last 4 or 5 rounds, that's all he wanted to do was go the distance. He had no intentions of trying to win at all. And, and Dalton Smith had to stand in the middle of the ring and like throw his hands up, like, come on and fight me. I hate when guys do that. Go get him. Do something. I don't care. Get dirty. Elbow him. Hit him in the nuts. Trip him. Grab him. Throw him on the ground. Do something to stop him from just running. I mean, because you know how it is. You can hit a guy in the nuts one time and headbutt him one time, and they won't disqualify you.
And he got a point deduction apparently in the 12th 4 low blows. You should have done that in the 3rd.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I always think like the old Fight Night games where you just that button that would throw the headbutt.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. Just get in there. If a guy's doing something you don't like, just get in there and get nasty with it. Hit him with an elbow. Do something to try to slow it, just to, maybe that'll slow him down. But yeah, it was just a boring ass fight. It did nothing for me. Smith, I just don't know where he's going to go. Not really anywhere.
Yeah, he probably. I wouldn't expect him to go anywhere particularly far off of a performance like this. But I don't know, Rob. They're saying that his route is going to be the winner of Alberto Puello and Subriel Matias. And I got to tell you that I think that Puello can cut angles a whole fucking lot better than Matthew Germain and counter a lot better too. And I think he just have his ears boxed off against Puello. And frankly, I think in a come forward fight, he's going to get the snot beaten out of him against Matias. He is kind of in a no-win situation where it would be he would be beating the odds by quite a bit to be victorious in a fight against the winner of those two. Wouldn't you say, Rob?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure which way that fight plays out. I think Matias, was kind of giving the edge, although Paro upset him like a while back. I think he has such a fucking tough style to deal with, like you said. So yeah, that's a tough ask either way. Like, who else is on the landscape for him?
I think that's what they're waiting for. Yeah, Des, do you know anything different as far as what could be in the pipeline for him?
No, it's a super hot division, 140, and Thomas Newman made the best shout. I think he's going to try and bring in a Puello, but the Puello don't get past Matias. It's Puello fighting Matias next, isn't he?
Yeah,
So
and I'll tell you what, the fact that they could make money off of an Adam Azim fight, but they don't want it.
No, they can't do that. They can't do it. No, they can't do it.
It tells you that it's a risky fight for him. As much as people think
No.
it's obviously, they might think that it's a foregone conclusion. They would have taken that fight if they thought it was easy.
No, the McGregors ain't interested in that because there's no need for Adam to fight Dalton Smith right now, and it's not really going to do any. It's not going to enhance Adam Azim right now. Look, so let's look at the 140 landscape. At the very top end, you've got T.O. Hitchens, the Japanese nightmare Hirioka. You've got people like Matias and Porro a little bit level down there. You've got Barbarossa level down there. Then you've got guys coming up like Anton Russell, Puello, Delgado. So, look, Dalton Smith he's not good enough to sell out a show on his own. He's not good enough to head these cards. And at the moment, he's wandering around in a boxing graveyard. Saturday night was an awful show. He can't even sell out arenas or stadium arenas in his own town, his own city. So where does Dalton Smith go? I just don't know is the answer. And if Puello loses if Puello beats Matias, I don't think they'll put him in with Dalton Smith. If he loses, maybe they will. I don't know why. I can just see who's Josh Taylor with at the moment. He's just signed a deal with someone, isn't he? Who's Josh Taylor signed with?
He's fighting Echo Esseman. I don't know whoever Esseman signed.
Yeah, so the winner of that might fight Dalton Smith because I think that's where that's how they're gonna. They can only pay Dalton what
you
he's
think
worth.
You'd move up to 147 for that one? Because that's
no. I think if Josh Taylor wins, they'll drag him down.
Oh Jesus! No, well, he might win that fight just because Josh can't make the weight safely.
Or the other
on that,
or a similar type of fight. They might look to make the Jack Catterall fight, something like that. But with Dalton Smith right now, either Dalton's got to take the jump, or he's not going to get a lot of money for not a lot of risk. And I think it's going to be that type of fight. It's going to be a domestically made, in-house, or take the risk. And try and fight the T.O.s or the Hitchenses or the Barbosas. But Dalton's not good enough to fight them sort of fights yet. Dalton, and look, he's had 18 fights in. He's a reasonable puncher, but he's not a ticket seller. You couldn't tell me his best win. Even on Saturday, I thought he was a bit stop-start, a bit intermittent. And Jermaine was there to be well sorted out. Jermaine was there to lose big. Jermaine's lost 2 or 3 times in his career. Jermaine's had a spell in his career where he had a 5-fight run where he was 2-1 and things like that. He's not, he's a Canadian kid that's a non-puncher. That was Dalton's chance to say, this is how good I am. Dalton's not good enough to sell these shows. Dalton's not good enough to headline an event. And Dalton's got nothing on his resume to suggest that you go anywhere near these killers at 140. And 140 is fast becoming one of the best divisions in boxing. So either Dalton has to make the jump, the step, and believe in himself. Something similar to what he did with Martin Bakary when they sent him out to America to fight Anderson. Or he's got to accept, I've got to just tread water in this bit of a riptide and wait till something comes up. But the Azim fight ain't going to come up. Someone like Pierce O'Leary could catch him out. Cattrall could catch him out. And the other monsters, the Hitchens, the T.O.s, the Matthiases, the Hiriokas, they'll definitely beat him. So I don't quite know where Dalton
especially when you talk about like Catterall doing like back foot shit, because if he couldn't deal with Jermaine doing back foot shit, then he's going to have a lot of problems with Catterall, and he just simply doesn't have the number of tools that a guy like Barboza has. He's definitely a higher IQ fighter than Smith, in my opinion, from what I've seen from both guys.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know. Let's just say Josh Taylor comes through Esserman, and I don't know he does, because Esserman's a really strong, solid, capable fighter at 147. Maybe they'll draw Josh down and offer him some big money, and maybe the Josh Taylor and the Dalton Smith fight could sell to a level. But that's the only feasible one I can. Like I saw them bringing over Regis for Cattrall. When everybody was talking about T.O. and Barbosa and Matthias, I can see the same thing here. They just make it easy and affordable. And I think at this stage, Josh Taylor might be definitely affordable and probably the easier of the options.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Looking at those title options there, Matt, I kind of think that Puello, the best option the best thing that could happen for them is for Puello to beat Matias, because at least Puello probably can't knock Dalton Smith out at the end of the day. And maybe they could get a bit lucky in the right arena on the right night with the hometown decision. So do you think that's probably the most preferable of all roads for Dalton Smith as far as risk reward goes, what he's looking at achieving in his career?
Maybe, Matty, and you're sort of hitting on it there when you say that Puello will be the best option for Smith, because he's never beaten Matthias. Let's get that straight. He's never beaten Matthias, and don't forget, as Rob pointed out, it's not a foregone conclusion that Puello beats Matthias either, because Matthias is he's a fucking beast, isn't he? But yeah, I suppose Puello is probably the best option for Smith, but I still think that in the current state that we see Smith in right now, as we saw him last night, he's not going to be a world champion at 140. In fact, like I sort of put in the private chat, anyone in that top 15 at 140, it's such a, like Des said, it's such a hot division right now. Anyone in that top 15 at 140 gives Smith a 50-50 fight, in my opinion, at best. And Puello has that knack for just fiddling his way through and just cutting his way through fights that, on paper, he should be losing. And if Smith is having a hard time figuring out boxers, and he's having a hard time figuring out guys who, move, who move around the ring, who are good at using angles and are working defensively, I think Puello is all wrong for him, to be honest. And Puello has the added advantage of being a guy who's not only a good boxer, but can shoot as well. He's got good hand speed. He's got good punch selection. I agree with you, Matty, that if Puello is there, they have to take it. But I can't see a world in which Dalton beats Puello, to be honest with you, mate. I just can't see it. On the version of Dalton that we saw last night, I just cannot see it.
What about Liam Perro? He's boxed onto zone. He's straight up and down, no frills. What about Liam Perro?
That's a better option, but I still think him. Yeah, I think Perro's too much for him as well, to be honest. I mean, it's a difficult one, Des, because like I say, you've got this really hot 140 division, and you look down the line and you're trying to make these fights, aren't you? You're trying to look down and you're trying to think, oh well, you know, what happens if we chuck him in with Dalton in with him? But the honest truth of it is that we've not seen Dalton in with anyone close to this sort of level. That's the truth of it. So if we're going to chuck Dalton in with a top 15 guy at 140, we are chucking him in a realm which he's never been in before. Paro's been in that realm. Paro beat Matthias, you know. So if we took Paro in with Dalton, I would be very fearful for Dalton's chances in that fight.
And he knocks out come forward fighters. He knocked out Brock Jarvis, Montana Love. He knocked that fucker out of the ring. You know, it was.
But mate, Dalton's 18 fights in there. I mean, there's got to be a time when we take the handcuffs off. We've got to say, like, this mollycoddling process. You're walking around with some version of a WBC belt around your waist. You're selling out shows, albeit on a low ticket number. You're talking about fighting for world titles. We're not trying to throw you in with a Tio or a Hirioka or a monster like Hitchens. We're not even saying going in with a puncher like Matthias. Let's go in with a guy that's been beaten by a guy. So I agree, by the way. I think Paro might have too much for Dalton, but we can't keep kid glove. I mean, surely there's got to come a time when the promoter sits down with a fighter and says, there's a list of 5 there. You've got to pick one, and I'll go and get them for you.
How about this? Oscar Duarte. Or is that too much?
You know, Garcia said that Duarte is the hardest puncher that he's faced. I mean, he might be bullshitting based on not giving Tank any flowers or anything like that, but I'd be wary about that one. Duarte is a real puncher.
He is a puncher, but he won't go running, will he? He won't have a Jermaine situation. He won't have a Jermaine situation on his hands. And so if Dalton wants to fight fire with fire and he's got the power to sit at that level, I think Duarte's just out of that top 15 at 140. So if you're looking for someone to make a statement against and show that you're willing to be in at that level, I think someone like Duarte might be the right sort of person. But I agree with you, mate. I really do that. You know, Duarte's no joke. I've personally been someone to, you know, underestimate Duarte, but you know, he proves me wrong again and again. The guy has, you know, brick walls for hands, and but if he gets beat by Garcia, and if he can do it better than Garcia did it and make a statement, then you're looking at the top of 140.
Yeah, that's a fair shout. I like that. Let's see here. James, did you catch this card on Saturday? I don't know if I was able to catch up with you on that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I caught the main event and the Warrington fight, and for me, the Dalton Smith. Yeah, cool. So Smith, I think, kind of got into a pattern early on in the fight where it was just good enough for him to be winning rounds. And I know he scored a couple of knockdowns too, but he wasn't really in a particular rush to put his foot down, even when he did score those knockdowns. And there were pockets where he pinned Jermaine against the ropes and he would let go with some impressive combinations, but then he was more than happy to let Jermaine kind of like wriggle away and, you know, sidestep and skirt around the ropes and stuff. And I just felt like he was unable or unwilling or didn't care enough about getting the stoppage to go through the gears and really accelerate his attack, because when he did start landing punches, I think there was a lot of craft to what he was doing. As for those potential matchups, I feel like he's more than good enough to stay in there with Paro. I think he'd probably beat the ghost of Josh Taylor. Matthias, for me, he's just a big, strong unit, and I don't really know how good he is. Yeah, like he's a big puncher and he can absorb punishment, but like I don't know how far that takes you in terms of like having a sustained run at the top of the division.
I think you might ask yourself, do you think basically like that Dalton Smith would be able to beat a Lucas Matisse? I think that might be a fair kind of like that area of puncher.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, like Lucas Matisse, he was quite a big puncher, wasn't he? But I think he has to be matched quite well, realistically. Obviously, you put him in with Tio, and he's just going to get smashed up, like simple. But I think
Provodnikov, I think might be a better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Matisse would kill him.
Yeah, Matisse would kill him.
I mean, yeah, that's a bad comparison. Matisse would destroy Dalton Smith.
What about Regis? What about Prograis?
I think Regis is so done right now. There's so few people I would pick.
That's the kind of fight. That's the kind of fight where you can go, oh, Catterall's just beat Prograis, and Josh Taylor had the fight with him. He's this kind of link to other top-ish level 140 fighters from the UK. That's the kind of link you want to make, really, to insinuate that Dalton Smith is on their level, Josh Taylor and Catterall, even if he isn't. I feel like Catterall is a very dangerous assignment for him because obviously he's going to do kind of a less evasive version of what Jermaine did, and he can really crack on the counter. So I think that's a bad matchup for him too. But I don't think he's by any means like sunk in this division. I think if they match him well, they could actually make a fair case that he's one of the best, but they'd have to be quite careful with him, I think, especially if you can't go through the gears on an occasion like this. If you can't do it against a guy who he's supposed to beat, how are you supposed to do it against a top-level American who's got all the tricks? So
it's a rough division to be in. I could see them trying to get the title fight, thinking he'll probably lose, and if he does, take like a fight like in Azim or someone else on a domestic level with a decent name, and kind of and go from there and just kind of pick your fights at that point in time. But I don't know. We shall see where that train ultimately ends. Justin, you and I were wrong on this one, though. Cayman Arjarko was able to get a W over Ryan Kelly yesterday. No, excuse me, 2 days ago. A majority decision. Is this one that you caught, and did you agree with the judges in this fight?
I had it on one of my 4 little screens on my TV. I watched most of it. I mean, Arjarko.
I thought Otis won the fight. Wait, I got shit mixed up.
Yeah, Kelly landed a lot of shots. I mean, Arjarko's. I still don't think Arjarko's going anywhere. Honestly, I don't think he punches hard enough, which might end up hurting him down the stretch. But he's got a lot of skill. It's just, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I didn't really care either way. I mean, I didn't really have a dog in this fight.
Reasonable opinion. I don't.
I didn't really have a dog in this fight. It was just 2 guys, and I'm not going to really follow them that close. Arjarko, I think he's missing a couple little things. He's got some nice boxing skills, but I just don't think he's going to have the punch to really go too high. Kelly, we kind of know what he is. He got the big push. He got the big casual push a few years ago, and he's finally found out his level where he's at. But I thought Kelly fought well. I mean, he landed a lot of shots. It was a close fight. I can see why it was a majority. I see why the decision was so close. I don't think you could have lost your mind if Kelly had won it. But Arjarko, I mean, on a late notice, because like I said, you watched him, and he looked really bad in his last fight.
Against a guy with very limited experience.
Yeah, so on a short notice fight, I wasn't sure, but it just shows how limited Kelly is too, though. It is what it is. I'm sure everybody else might have a better opinion than me and you do, but it just was what it was.
Yeah, he's in a similar position to Smith does, where he's also in a division at 154 where it's just stacked to the brim. It's like there's a ceiling on Cayman Arjarko that's not just based on his abilities, but it's based upon the incredible abilities of those who are rated much higher than he is.
Yeah, Jarko, he's a level or 2 below where Dalton is. Dalton's, kind of trying to break away from European level, and I think Jarko's got to cement himself as a good British champion, or of that level, good domestic level fighter. So, my opinion is not too much different to what Justin's is. That I can see what he's got, but I can also see what he hasn't got, and I think he's a kid of a level. But he did save the fight coming in late notice. I thought he'd won the fight, but I wouldn't have been, we wouldn't have screaming if the other kid had got it. But I just think he's got to show us a bit more, or we have to accept that there's probably a low ceiling for where Arjarko goes. But no complaints, but he's a kid of a level.
Yeah, the levels exist, and he might be rapidly approaching his at this point in time. So, but yeah, we'll see on that one. Let's keep moving on this card here. James, you said that you saw Josh Warrington against Asad Asif Khan, who was a recent opponent of Mick Conlan. Also taking Josh Warrington the distance, even though he was down to 6 and apparently deducted a point for repeatedly losing his gum shield, according to the good people at BoxRec. But Warrington back in the win column again, James. And for once, he wasn't the guy who was deducted a point. Surprised.
Well, it's unusual to see Josh Warrington because physically he looks better than ever, but he's just lost something, and it's just maybe age, miles on the clock. The run he went on where he beat Selby, then Frampton, and probably every fight he had going up to the Mauricio Lara fight. I was a fan. I don't care. Well, I don't mind that he headbutts and throws elbows and stuff, but he is a dirty fighter. There's no two ways about that. But he's like high octane, high output, good chin up to the point where it got cracked. And I've enjoyed watching him over the years, but that was a little bit of a tough watch because you could see a fighter trying to do what he's been doing for years, and he just couldn't, like smothering his own work. Timing was off. He just looked a little bit tense, and against this level of operator, no disrespect, he shouldn't really be struggling given what he's been able to do throughout his career. So I don't see him getting any better based off the back of that performance, especially when you take into consideration the last couple of results he's had. And he's been on the receiving end of a few hidings, realistically, over the past couple of years. So with that in mind, I don't really know where he goes or what's his route forward. He said he wanted to sign off on a performance that he could be proud of, and I doubt this was it. But I don't know how he improves upon that, really, given the state of his body and this point of in his career, really.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Matt. I have a hard time actually believing that Warrington came back without a 2-3 fight plan to make a few bucks with a specific opponent or two in mind. I don't think this is just, we're just going to take them as they come kind of stuff. I feel like there's a plan.
Yeah, I agree with James. I think when you're coming back into the ring, especially after, and I know you talked about this a lot, Matty, last week, but putting your gloves in the ring after the fight, when you come back after you've essentially retired, you've got to come back with some sort of plan to make money. And it's obviously going to be in such a way that he wants to look back on his career and, at least know that he ended off with a win or ended off with a couple good fights on his record. Aside Steve Khan isn't that sort of fighter. I mean, it's I suppose you'd call it a ring rust taker off fights. I mean, it wasn't really all that interesting. I watched a little bit of it, but yeah, I mean, he got the he got the 10 rounds out of him. It was 10 rounds, yeah. He got the 10 rounds out, and wasn't really all that impressive. Warrington looks like he was trying to force a stoppage a lot of the time, but he just wasn't coming. I don't know if that was just due to power or if that was just due to Khan just being that sort of crafty fighter. But in terms of where we're looking for next in his career, I think they were talking about the Conlan fight, weren't they? And I suppose that's a good question, really, for the whole panel. How does a Warrington-Michael Conlan fight go? They're both realistically shot fighters. They're both realistically on the last one, if not, last two fights of their career. And I honestly think it's going to be a fight of who outlasts who. Conlan's chin has been cracked. We know this now. He's had losses against guys who are far below what we would perceive to be his level. But Warrington is similar as well in the sense that he's lost his step. He's definitely lost half a step over the past couple of years. I still think Warrington probably has enough for Conlan to beat him on maybe points, but yeah, it's an interesting fight, and I think that's probably the direction they're going to go in terms of next steps for Warrington. If not now, then the fight after the next one, build them into that, and that'll be their big last hurrah fight.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of an interesting potential fight, but I have to tell you in that one, as you know, I'm not a big fan of Josh Warrington to any degree, but I would have to take him over Mick Conlan, just in the fact that Conlan was always getting touched up at 126 pounds and getting hurt, and then getting stopped by someone who is not a big puncher at 130 pounds. Warrington's not a massive puncher, but he does enough to bother you, and he can hurt you. I mean, he had Lee Wood in all sorts of trouble before he got blasted out of nowhere and found himself losing that fight. So I don't know. I almost, except against very specifically light punching fighters, I fear for Mick Conlan in any fight that he chooses to take.
I'd fear for Mick Conlan if he was having a fight with his girlfriend. Like this guy, look, it's two old war horses that have had brilliant careers in one way or another. Mick had a brilliant amateur career and come through a really good country. Didn't quite happen for him in the pros, but I don't think he was ever coached properly. I don't think he was ever explained to him. It's a strength to know your weaknesses. I don't think Conlan ever learned that. Josh had an amazing career, and as a bit like Sam Edgington, turned up, not quite like Sam, offering him services as a journeyman, but he was a kid that had to knock on doors and sell tickets off TV, small hall shows, and he worked his way to the big league. Josh had a fantastic career. If you don't know who's going to win, how am I meant to know? He's one of them ones, isn't it, mate? I don't quite know who gives what who. Josh is a roughhouse. I think he's got a bit more left in the tank. I'd probably have more faith in Josh's durability and poke than I do in Mick's. So for that reason, I'd probably Josh. But I wish they weren't both. I wish both of them would call it a day and do other things. They must have earned loads of money out of the game. They must have an idea of what they want to do outside of boxing, please God. So it's not a type of fight I want to see. I don't want to see any of them involved. I didn't want to see Josh Warrington last night, if I'm honest. He's had his career, and I'd like him to move on. Same for Mick. Mick's been knocked out too many times, and Mick's been beaten by guys that were on the way out of the sport. So I think I'd go with Josh purely because he's less vulnerable and a bit more rough and tough than what Mick's ever shown. If that answered the question for you, mate.
Yeah, I don't know. Justin, I'll tell you, odds if they were close enough where it wasn't just dumping. Because God knows how the bookies would see this fight. I would probably have. I missed more than I hit probably, but I would have no problem putting on Warrington against Conlan, and it's just simply because Conlan has that machismo factor where he just fights like he's a puncher, and he's not. I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, and it gets him into so much damn trouble, and it's going to happen again, and he's going to end up knocked out.
I would go with Warrington with a late stoppage. I would say Warrington, like I said, the fight yesterday I didn't watch that. I had no desire to watch him fight some random Indian guy and in his comeback. I could care less. But yeah, you're right. He'll beat Conlan. Conlan, I mean, like Des said, and we've all said it, Conlan doesn't really have a level because he could lose to a guy who's 8-10 just because he can't take any shots.
He'll just stand in front of somebody and get punched in the chin.
Conlan can't take it. He just, in his last fight, he took a lot of shots. He just can't take it. And Warrington is tough enough, and Conlan doesn't punch hard enough. So I would say I'd say it being a war because, like you said, Conlan would want to make it a war. It would turn into that, and I think Warrington would probably get his. I think James or Matt or somebody said that, go out on a high note. I think that's how Warrington's looking for it because he would get a pretty good payday versus Conlan. They would get a pretty good crowd to show up. I think he would stop him, and then Warrington could end on a high note, and I think that's how he would go out. Then he could lay his gloves back in the ring again. He can do whatever he wants to do, but I think that's kind of what Warrington's looking at because Warrington's not stupid. He, like you said, he was going to get a fight deal with this. He knew what was going to happen. He just had to beat this guy. They were going to set it up. He's getting one last paycheck, and he's going to get to go out on a high. by knocking out Conlan. I think that's what he kind of figured the whole time. That's why he come back. I mean, we like Conlan. I mean, he come on here. He seems like a nice guy. He just, some people aren't built to be pros. They're just not. I think I mentioned Patty Barnes earlier. Some guys are just amateurs or they're good at a certain level, but maybe they're just not meant to be elite pros, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, not everybody can do this. Not everybody can be a champion. Not everybody can take the shots. It's just everybody's a little bit different, and that's just he had his moment. He just couldn't take it. He had Wood. He was winning that fight. And then he got knocked out. That was his moment. That was his time. He only had a couple of rounds left, and then he got annihilated. Who knows what would happen if he'd have got through that? But, hey, you take what you get, and I think Warrington I would definitely put all my money on Warrington to beat him.
Yeah, that's just my hunch on how this goes. So, let's see. But, I would like to give a nod to Josh Padley, who has come back and gotten a nice W on that card as well, and acknowledges work after stepping in on late notice against Shakur Stevenson. Anyhow, I think that'll be good because we just.
Well, also, I'd like to throw in there a nod to the guy he beat with a 14-0 record is the definition of a padded record.
Padley against padded.
Yeah, exactly. Because could you imagine the 14 guys he beat? Because he was awful.
You wonder where they found him. It's like, they weren't even tough cab drivers, unfortunately. That card, it doesn't look it doesn't look like it was a fantastic card by any stretch of the imagination. It was kind of one of those weekends, and we will, obviously go ahead and, preview stuff coming up. Maybe a bigger card as far as it goes, in the opinion of the promoters, at least. We'll wrap up with this DAZN card. I don't know who caught this one. It was on Saturday, headlined by Gabriela Fundora, yes, sister of Sebastian, and she's continuing out her knockout ways, getting one over the undefeated Maryland Badillo Amaya, who gave up a whole lot of height against Fundora, but that's going to be the story against most of these for most of these fighters who challenge her. And Badillo did all right, fighting as a smaller fighter at times, but Fundora worked hard. She put her punches together well, and she hurt Badillo at times, and ultimately she was able to kind of sweep with the feint right hook when she had her against the ropes and land a nasty left hand. I shouldn't call it feint right hook, it was a throwaway. And then she just landed a nasty straight left. She's really developed that straight left hand is a great weapon, and she got the stoppage there. We'll see what happens for her. It's going to be hard to find really solid opponents for Fundora. I think she's going to have to move north, but she's becoming quite the pro. Did anybody see that particular fight and want to chime in? I'm not going to force you to do things you don't want to do. In fact, Mr. Butters ran away because of it. He didn't I don't need it. Yeah, I'm going to jump off, he says. Oh, look at that. Actually, timeout. Let me do timeout real quick on that, because Ames jumped on, and I don't want to have to circle back to everything we just talked about when I just started a brand new card. So before we go to that fight, Ames, what of Whitaker and what of the Dalton Smith cards? Feel free to talk about the British boxing that happened over the weekend.
Cheers, Matty. Dalton Smith, I pretty much just watched that main event and a bit of Josh Warrington. I thought Josh was okay for comeback fight and building on the trail. And if you compare the fight with Michael Conlan, and that's the path for Josh. That's what I suggested to Mick when he was looking to come back and having that fight with Khan. You would obviously compare and contrast those two performances, and you feel like they're two opponents that are fit for each other. So maybe one last assault at a big fight or one last payday kind of thing. And I thought Warrington was fine, to be honest with you. He didn't look like a fighter who was shot by any means, but of course you got the opposition who isn't at the level that you'd been at before. But if there was the inability to hold a shot or an issue as he doesn't have it anymore, and that's the type of fighter that you can come unstuck against. And for me, he sort of passed those checks of red flags against him to say that you wouldn't want him to continue. So that fight with Michael Conlan, if they can do it over in America, if they have to do it in Ireland or Leeds or whatever it is, another big fight, another big opportunity. You have to favour Josh, but by no means would you say that Mick's not in with the shout of stopping Warrington either. Mick's a really capable technical fighter, and he showed against Lee Wood he can drop you with a shot if you give him that opportunity. And on another night, a referee might have waved that off because of the way that Lee Wood crashed to the canvas. But it was a fantastic turnaround in that fight, and that's history. Dalton Smith, I think there was you just want that extra gear out of Dalton, and I wouldn't say he's faltered by any means, but it's just when you're looking at a prospect and you sold a prospect, you're looking for them to go through the levels and maintain their high performances that they've shown in the previous levels. And that Matthew Germain was there for the taking. I think, like, despite the commentary saying he was negative or whatever you want to say about Germain, him not willing to exchange or willing to fight, it's the onus is on Dalton Smith. He's the A side. He's the one that they're talking about being the next star or the big thing from Sheffield. You've dropped your man 3 times or 2, however many times. You've got the beating of this guy. Go put it on him. You're the A side fighter. If you put a flurry on, and if the fighter doesn't come, if the opponent doesn't come back with an answer, you're going to get the stoppage. So I just want to see Dalton do that and do that more often, because he would have. That stoppage was absolutely there for the taking. He took his best shot. Didn't seem to even buckle the legs of Dalton really. So what really was he waiting on? They kind of said that he kind of waits for the perfect shot. Well, against Puello or against Matias or against any of the other champions in a perfect shot. So maybe those levels, and maybe because it's something that he knows he's got the beating of, he just kind of coasts through, and we might see something better out of Dalton. Not to say that it was bad by any means, but you want something more from him, and it didn't come, and it should have come against Matthew Germain. What else did I see? I was at the Ben Whitaker fight. Unfortunately, I didn't see the Ben Whitaker stoppage in my own eyes. I had to watch it back on a replay because I was backstage grabbing interviews. A lot of the time when you go to these shows and you work, and you don't actually get to see a lot of the fights because you're grabbing and hustling and trying to get time with fighters who just fought or people who are around ringside. So I didn't get to see it. I asked some of the fellow media members as to their takes on it, and a few said it was premature. A few said he was hurt, and he it's probably a fair stoppage. On the replay, it looked like to me, look, he got caught, he shelled up, but he didn't come back with anything, and that was his downfall. We're talking about A-side fighters and B-sides and whatever. If you give that referee the excuse, they'll stop it, because that is the game. And unfortunately, when you're on that B-side, you're up against that hill. And Liam Cameron just, I think for me, he probably should have been given a little bit longer, but he didn't get it. He should have had maybe a little bit of experience in Nuthouse to try and hold on or try and come back with something to buy himself a little bit of time. But it was a real good shot from Ben Whitaker, who had a lot of emotion. He broke down during the post-fight press conference. He said he had to deal with a lot. He had to deal with a lot of doubts about him, calls that he quit, calls that saying his injury was fake, and it was a release of emotion for him on that night. And I can understand that for Ben, but to a degree, I feel like he should also embrace it. I quite like the fact that in the same sort of way that high-level athletes like Wayne Rooney sort of had that emotion and edge about him, and he teetered on it. By no means did you really see, I can't remember a moment where you saw Wayne Rooney particularly break down in tears or anything, but you knew that Wayne was on the edge of a yellow or 2 yellows or a red card or something. You know he had that in him. I think talents like Ben Whitaker, they're just, something can kind rock 'em one way, and that could bring out something out of him. It brought out a big shot, and it brought out a little bit of like doubt and a little bit of stick, a little bit of something to prove. Might be the thing that gets that extra bit out of Ben. And I remember that clip of him and Andy Clarke where Andy was, I guess, with some constructive criticism, and he said, "Well, you've never been in the ring before, have you?" But you with Ben, and the way he fights, you need both sides of the coin. You need people to tell him what he's doing, he shouldn't do, and you also need people to say it's great, because that's what gets people talking. So, to a degree, I think you should try and maybe embrace those parts of it, because that's what's going to springboard him to notoriety and more fame and more opportunity and more money. And that's the bottom line of this game. I don't think there's enough to say really about how the link up with Andy Lee has gelled in, embedded in, for all intents and purposes, from the brief conversations I had with Andy and seeing them their comments post fight. It seemed like they're both very comfortable with each other, and they're establishing that rapport and style, and it's something that's going to continue on. And he's passed the baton. The baton's been passed from Sugar Hill. Of course, it's like the Kronk kind of DNA. So there seemed to be like a good fit in that stage, but I think it's just about managing Ben, slowing him down now, giving him a few fights before he then jumps back up to title contention or things of that nature, because he's got time to gel in, and got time to entertain as well too. The light heavyweight division is, once you get to the top, you're talking about elite level talent. Everything else below, with respect to everyone else below that, is sort of striving for an opportunity for something that when one of them leaves the division. So until then, he's looking at that domestic type of level, I think. And there's some good fights to be made for him, like the likes of Aziz and many other fights that you could have, or they might go the international route as well. But you can slow him right down and keep Birmingham growing, because there's a good crowd in there. I don't know how many they sold, as in sold per tickets, and I think I was told there's 10,000 people in there. I'm no real gauge as to how many people are in there, but it was well populated, and one of the better populated events that I'd seen for events that they've had in the Midlands. But yeah, they said they sold 10K. I just wonder how many of them were sold and actually like comps in there. But yeah, no, it was he did genuinely what was required of him, because if there's doubts about you, there's one way to settle them, and that's one big stoppage. And it was brilliant from him. I saw Tete and Clarke and Tete. That was a big shot. Exactly what Fraser Clarke needed to do. Sort of puts in perspective Dylan White's fight with Ebenezer Tete as well. But real good comeback victory for Fraser. What else was there on the other card? I saw bits of Sam Edgington and Lee Cutler. Interesting if that fight wasn't stopped and if those last two rounds went ahead, because Cutler was closing the gap on Edgington, and he was gutted after that fight. That maybe he didn't press on the gas and really kind of put it on Sam, because Sam's obviously been through the wars, and he doesn't get rated for his boxing skills because of the wars that he's been in, because of the fight he's perceived. And also I think it's unfair to kind of label Sam as just like this stepping stone towards something, because he is clearly, as you've seen, he's still got a lot about him. And if you're up against Sam Edgington, you can't think, look, this is a fighter who's been in the wars. I'm going to come in and he's ready for the taking, and I'm going to get the victory. You have to really prepare for Sam, because he's still fit, he's still got desire, and he still wants himself his own big shot. So I would like to see that fight get run back again. I would imagine that John Pegg and the team would want to seize the opportunity and push forward and get the biggest and best opportunity for their fight. And you completely understand that. Wonder how the McGuigan dynamic might work out, because they will want the rematch. They will want to put pressure on Boxer and such for that, especially the way the fight was going. And they've got fighters that were within Boxer, so maybe they can kind of push for a rematch for Cutler. And to be honest with you, I think that fight probably it warrants a rematch in the way because the fight didn't end naturally, and you want to see how those last 2 rounds go because that would have been really interesting. But that's about as much as all that I remember I saw, apart from Denny and Ahoga, which was entertaining, but Denny was in control. But Elvis is fun, and I would like to see him on more cards because he's entertaining and gives fighters rounds and puts pressure on fighters as well too. So hopefully we'll get to see more of Elvis, who is a bit of a fan favorite.
Yo,
Excellent.
Yo,
quick question. On TV, it really sounded like Whitaker got a horrible response from the Birmingham crowd. What was it like in the arena? Was it comparable, or were you kind of backstage? Or
I was backstage, but you could hear the boos. He did get booed into the ring. Quite surprising. Ben Shalom was saying that Liam Cameron's lot, there was a lot of them in there, and I don't know how many of them was in there, but it sounded like if he sold 1,000 or 2,000, it sounded like it was more than that, and it sounded like the Birmingham crowd were booing him. But there is a little bit more to that because it's a Birmingham crowd. He is from Wolverhampton, and there is that little bit of a local thing.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking like how it's kind of crazy, like picking the nearest city rival to put on a fighter who is so like chalk and cheese in a way, because I do think he rubs people the wrong way, myself included. And I wonder if there was a venue in Wolverhampton that would have been better suited for him. I'm not sure what the scene is like there, but it was a dicey move, I think, in terms of public perception.
I don't know, because this is exactly what you. Regardless if they booed or not, they turned in and tuned in and paid a ticket. I think I think it's brilliant. I think they should keep bringing him in. Ben won't really care as long as there's, when it comes to his bank account and he sees that he's getting paid for it. I don't think he particularly cares what side of the coin it lands on. And I think that it will mix. The more fights he gets, you might get you might get more of a fair split in terms of boos and jeers. There is a venue in Wolverhampton, but it holds just a few hundred more than York Hall, and it was a nice little tight venue. I think Ben fought there before. Reactport was on that card, and a couple of others were on that. No, was it Adam Azim who fought on that card? I can't remember who fought on that card. Ben might have been on that card, but there is, what I'm trying to say is anyway, there is a venue in Wolverhampton, but it is about 1,300, 400. And like I mentioned there, they were talking about how they'd sold around 10,000. They obviously couldn't go there, but that's the nearest and biggest, I think, unless you're looking at like the Wolverhampton Stadium, and I don't think that's quite an option just yet. But I don't think it matters if he gets booed or not, because that's his game. His style is going to create conversation, and you will land on either side of the coin. But if you're buying a ticket and coming to boo him, it doesn't matter because you bought a ticket.
Yeah, you're bang on there, to be fair.
If it makes dollars, it makes sense, right? So, yeah. Well, thank you for summing all that up. We'll circle back around. Justin, I had talked about the performance of Gabriela Fundora, and I think you might have been the only person who caught that. If you were, feel free.
No, I didn't want the main event for me was the Conwell fight. I didn't really watch the fight. I don't watch No, I don't watch the women's fight, so I didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, she's gonna be something. She's another stoppage. So, but yeah, anyway, that Conwell fight caught people by surprise. His opponent was, I think, well more than 5-1, paying more as 5-1 as an underdog, and the split decision. I think it was, maybe it was UD.
It was really close, like a round difference on each, like the split decision. It was a good fight. I think.
Were you surprised that the opponent got the decision and it wasn't Conwell?
Oh, you're always surprised. But for me, I mean, Perez won. So, I mean, you never know. They tried to – I think Perez just outworked him. He threw some great body shots. And Conwell – I wouldn't say the surprise is the word you would use, but I don't think he expected it. I don't think he expected Perez to have that kind of motor. And Conwell has been on a roll where he's just like the announcer said it last night. He's been bulldozing people. And Perez took every shot. And I think that was the moment where, as a fighter, you have to change it up. And Conwell didn't. He tried to keep doing his little thing where he was trying to, be the aggressor, and he was trying to come straight forward and knock him out. But when Perez took the shots, Conwell needed to change it up. He needed to jab his way in a little bit more. He needed to box him a little bit more. He couldn't do that. His corner kept telling him, you've got to box this guy now. You can't, you've got to try to, it was just, Perez wasn't going to get hurt. And Perez was throwing some incredible body shots. And I can't believe Conwell actually took the body shots. But it was ugly. Conwell, he just looked, I don't know if he couldn't or just didn't have it in him to change anything up, but he really couldn't change anything. The corner tried. Conwell just didn't have it in him. Perez, this is 2 upsets in a row for him because he beat some guy named Kukarov. He was another one of those prospects he beat in his last fight. So,
he beat Abdu Kakarov.
Yeah, he beat him. So this is 2 in a row.
Shit, I missed that one.
So Perez has put himself in the top 10 now. I mean, he's going to be a guy that you don't want to fight this guy because he's got a really good chin and he doesn't stop. His motor, he was throwing the whole time, and he throws wicked body shots. And Conwell, he landed, he was throwing like 3, 4. You don't see guys like that much anymore. He was throwing like 3 or 4 body shots in a row, and he can take a shot. So Perez was impressive. I think even the commentary, nobody expected it to happen because, Conwell just signed with Golden Boy. This is only like his second or third fight with Golden Boy. I don't think they expected this to happen because they were talking about like the first couple of rounds of Conwell, like world title fight coming up. And that's completely destroyed now. I think they'll probably try to rematch this one because Conwell doesn't have anywhere to go now. He was looking to move up in the title contention, but Perez is just hard. I mean, sometimes, you run into these guys that are just tough and have a motor, and Conwell but Conwell did show last night. I think he hit his ceiling. He looked limited because he just couldn't do anything else. And it wasn't a good sign that he had no plan B. He didn't have another gear. He looked shell shocked. You can see on his face. It was a lot of holding. He didn't know what to do. And it just didn't look, it wasn't a good look when you look at his face and he's sitting there looking at his corner like, I don't know where to go. But Perez, like I said, I wouldn't want to fight him. And I think they'll just probably try to rematch that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he takes it because I think that was probably for a title opportunity. So you wonder if he'll even be interested in wandering back that way if that's potentially the risk that he's got to take there. Did anyone else see this fight?
No, not me. Not you.
All right, yeah, I was kind of watching.
There is that real quick. There is that, or that Matt, that might be for me and you to talk about, but. The young American Olympian made his debut last night at heavyweight. That Edwards. He's with.
I don't know if I saw that one.
Yeah, he's with Ronnie. What's the guy in Texas that had the Charlos? Ronnie Steele, or what's his name?
Ronnie Shields.
Ronnie Shields, not Ronnie Steele. That was Richard Steele was the referee.
You're fine, dude. You're fine.
Yeah, he's with him now, and he's from Houston. He looks decent. I mean, he fought a freaking horrible opponent last night, but I mean, he does have, he's going to get a push. He's got the Olympian part. He looks the part. I mean, he's got a good trainer. I don't know if, maybe it's another American hope for us. We'll check him out. I mean, I like the looks. We'll see.
Yeah, there's limited hope in so many ways when it comes to the boxing scene and other things. Let's see. Also on that card, Ruslan Abdullayev, in only a second fight, went to an 8-rounder with Gino Rodrigo, and he looked pretty good in picking up the UD there. That's a good step up for a very young fighter. I believe that he was potentially an Olympian, or at least obviously an amateur standout to be getting that push. Yoel Iriarte was on there picking up a win against an overmatched opponent, but he's staying busy. Jorge Chavez beat 13-1 Brandon Douglas. That's probably the best win of the undercard as far as it goes. And Tristan Kelkruth picked up a unanimous decision over Felix Valera. Yeah, I think I saw that one. Yeah, they called it cruiser, but they were both over 205. And
Valera was like the champion. I think Bevo beat him like 9 years ago. Or I think they still. I remember that. I think I'm right about that. Yeah, Valera has been around, but You said Abdullayev.
He
I think
lost
he's
to
gonna be-
Vyacheslav Shabransky in 2019. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I was like, God, but Abdullayev is going to be something. People should watch him because that guy he fought last night was like really tough. It's never been stopped, and I think Abdullayev is going to definitely be a contender for something.
Yeah, he was probably the standout of the undercard when you're just thinking about the way they're moving along and the level of opposition, honestly. I was relatively impressed there. Trying to think if there's anything else. Vosdik was on there. His opponent really doesn't have much of a record, so that couldn't speak much to that. Yeah. So I think that
you talk about Kovalev.
Oh yeah, and Kovalev retired. He was that was I didn't get a chance to watch that, but that was on the boxing news website. Go ahead, Ames. What he got a 7th round stoppage over Artur Mann in his final fight of his career, 42 years old, hanging him up. Not a bad way to go out, I guess, Ames.
No, he dropped him early, and then he sort of let Mann come back in, and then he eventually kind of just found another gap and then hurt Mann again, landing on the chin. And it's a good little win. It was up at heavyweight, I think it was, or somewhere near it. 192 pounds, so it's not quite heavyweight, but and I think Mann won the. Oh no, he won a WBF cruiserweight title. That's not a recognized title, but
He's
I
been
wonder
in there
if he
with
might.
good operators. I mean, he didn't beat any of them really, but he's been with good operators.
But I think it's a good way for Kovalev to bow out of the sport. Like, he was a real good fighter in his pomp, weren't he? And I remember when he fought Nathan Cleverly over in the UK, and he was just another level. He was a real good fighter, and the way that fight was going the first time, I mean, I would say he beat Andre Ward for me in the first fight, but didn't get the nod. And then obviously the controversy in the second one, but for maybe his out the ring behavior and abuse of his own body, he could have really dominated for a few years. And again, sort of like moments really, because it was just that one split moment against Canelo Alvarez, and it just he might have got that victory, and that all just slipped away from him in one moment. But bloody good fighter, modern great is probably what is the best way to describe Kovalev, and he's fitting of that moniker.
Oh, I agree. He was obviously, him and Ward, a legitimate 1 versus 2 or 1A versus 1B more so fight for all the marbles. Incredible fighter, definitely deserves his pound for pound ranking at one point in time. Daniela De Rossi throwing a tenor in there. Nice to see you back. Says, I think Andy Lee gets unfair criticism. It's arguable he improves every fighter he gets. Thanks, guys. Justin has the coolest accent. Would listen to him read the phone book. Forzo Roma Sempre, guys. Hey, thank you very much. You have yourself a great rest of the day, and I hope you had a wonderful Easter. And then the Pope died. Made it terrible, right? But anyhow, let's see here. What are we going to go to next? Oh, it's just been one of those weeks. Des, I didn't get to catch any of this boxing Grand Prix that's going on, but they had featherweights, they have middleweights, they had heavyweights. Do you catch any of this action?
In between going away, in between Easter Sunday, Good Friday, Pope Francis passing away today, God bless him, I've not seen any of that Grand Prix stuff.
Okay. Justin, I know you have.
Yeah. I mean, I was off for 4 straight days, so I had time. The lower weight classes were fun. I don't know where in the hell they dragged some of these heavyweights out of. We had like a 5'8", 250-pound like guy from Nicaragua. We had just random ass guys in the heavyweight, though. There's a couple of good-looking heavyweight guys that might have a chance. There's a young Uzbek named Abdulov, I think, or Muladov. I don't remember what his name was. But, man, there was some rough cats they brought out for the heavyweight. Like I said, the lower weight classes, those were good fights, but my God, I've never heard of I've never heard of any of the heavyweights except for like one, Dante Hands of Stone. He really did get creative, but I think he looks like he's 47 years old. Like I said, the Nicaraguan guy was the funny one. He must have been 5'7" or 5'8". Could barely crawl into the ring. He lasted a couple of rounds. They really scraped. They put a little effort into the lower weight classes, but my God, they just must have sent out an email to anybody that wanted to sign up for it. I mean, they had guys making their debuts. It was, the heavyweight was the Saudis did not do a lot of work on the heavyweights. But I mean, if you got nothing else to do, there's some decent fights. There's some good knockouts. I just kind of skimmed through a fight that looked interesting. It's on YouTube, so it's easy as hell to get to. If you want to go through there and skim them, I suggest not stopping on the heavyweight much. But like there was, usually China doesn't want to embarrass themselves in the sporting world, but God, they send over some just god awful dudes. Had like rolls hanging down. They just looked awful. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend going back and watching any of the heavyweight. It was definitely shit you would see out here on the street.
Excellent. I like that take. Ames, did you watch any of this Grand Prix? Or did he step away?
He left.
Oh, he left at the moment. Okay. Well, anyways, did anyone catch any of that Grand Prix stuff? If not, we'll move on.
No, not me, mate.
All right. Fantastic. So let's see here. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything before we move on here into the quote-unquote big card. So big they put it on pay-per-view in the United States. What an amazing day. Yep, that's all I got here. Let's so yeah, we'll see or make sure on boxing. I'll tell you, it's just it's a little bit slow, and then they stacked it all into one weekend coming up here into the normal Cinco de Mayo weekend. Just want to make sure there's nothing I'm missing here. Eric Tudor against Kevin Johnson. Oh boy, I don't know which Kevin Johnson that is. That's going to be on Friday on DAZN. Yep. So you're Ashton Silva against Nicholas Polanco. It's not the good Polanco. It's going to be a BLK Prime pay-per-view. My word. Let's see here. Man, it is rough times. Kurt Scobie against Jesus Vasquez Jr. will be a week from today a week from yesterday on DAZN. It'll be a Sunday card. So yep, I guess we'll just go to the main part of the show there. It's going to be on pay-per-view everywhere, greatly overestimating the interest in the American audience, but lo and behold, here we are. Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn over 12 rounds at middleweight. Also on that card, Liam Smith against Aaron McKenna over 10. Anthony Yard against Lyndon Arthur, the third time's the charm. Chris Billiam-Smith against Brandon Glanton, a fight I actually really like. And Vidal Riley against Siobhan Clarke. Why don't we go ahead and go to Des? Why don't you give me your take on that undercard, some fights that you're looking at, the cream of the crop, in your opinion?
Well, cream of the crop's Yard and Arthur. That's an exciting fight for me. It's an intriguing fight with a lot of jeopardy for both of them. I've never been oversold on Yard. I think he's very limited, and I don't think he's got a very high ceiling. I think he spent most of his career inactive and boxing at a very low level most of his career. I think if you're going to go on their last fights, you probably think Lyndon looks the better fighter. But we can't underestimate the effects that perhaps Yard had on Lyndon in their second fight. It's a hard one to pick that. I'm not sold on either guy. And it might be who can adapt to the other's style the better. Will Yard get around Lyndon's long reach, keeping you at distance, reactive style? And will Lyndon be able to keep Yard off him for 12 rounds and switch him off? Remember, Yard's not someone that can do two or three things. He's a good puncher. He can pressure. He's strong. But he's been making light heavy for a long time now, Yard, and a lot of them fights he never had to come in at the limit. He come just over. So I don't quite know what the weight making is going to be like for Yard on this one. I've got a funny feeling, based on the last performance, when Yard was in there with a guy that kept it long, I think Lyndon might catch Yard out here over a points decision. It'll be a close one, but I think Lyndon might have enough to keep Yard guessing, offset him. It's a hard one to call that. They're two kids of a level, in my opinion, but I think Lyndon might have a style that negates Yard at this time in his career. I must say, I've never been oversold on Yard, if I'm honest. Bilham Smith's coming back. He's got to get over his last performance. Vidal Riley, Chev Clarke. I like that one too. That's a good domestic fight. Don't know much about Vidal. Not seen much of him. And when he stepped up to area level, he became a very reactive fighter, which tells me there's something not quite right. Chev's found out. Chev's pretty much no for straight up and down. He got caught out on the road against a very capable operator for a European title. So he's back where he belongs at domestic level. That's a good one. All depends what type of Chev Clarke we see and whether Vidal's going to be a bit more proactive. He can't be too reactive against Chev. And if he is, Chev's got to show us a few moves, a few gears. That's a hard one to pick that. Liam Smith will beat Aaron McKenna. Aaron's a kid with a lot of potential, and I think he had a lot of tools, but he just kept on the sideline for so long and not having the right fights at the right time. And Liam is such a capable operator. He's such a solid pro. Liam wins that one. But it's a really intriguing undercard, and there's 2 or 3 fights there that I think are going to be really fascinating.
Here's something very interesting to you, Des. Even though you didn't mention this, and I'm going to go to Justin with this one because I think he might know a bit more about this, Brandon Glanton. But I got Glanton at a little bit more than 3-2, and then he went down to about 3-2. He is now at even money against Chris Smith, who is paying, what would you call it, 3-4. Minus 130 for us, Justin. This fight, I think, could surprise some people, and I'm interested to see that the bettors are getting in on Glanton because he's a bad guy for a dude coming off a loss who's getting smacked around by a guy who is tall enough but opened up his career at super middleweight. Everyone seems to think CBS is in trouble on the betting side of things, or at least a good chunk of people. What are your thoughts on this undercard fight, Justin?
I'm with you. Glanton could be undefeated. I mean, Glanton is one of these guys that he shows up in shape. He's going to come right at Smith, and you know how Smith is. He's going to jump into a fight. He can't help it. He gets, he always gets in a war. He always gets hurt. And Glanton is tough. I'm like you. I can see it going either way, but I would lean towards Glanton. I just think Glanton is going to, versus, like you just said, a guy that has been through a lot. Glanton is probably not the guy I would have chosen to come back in with. I don't think that's the guy I would have picked. But this is going to be a good fight. And Glanton, another reason I think Glanton has got an edge is because he has to know how many more chances he's going to get. He's ranked in the top 10. This is his moment. I mean, he's on you call it a pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it, but this is it for him. He knows he has to shine. And I think Glanton, he's not overly skilled, but he just has stuff that can get to Bilham Smith. He has the motor. You're not going to stop him. It's hard. He's hard to hurt. He's hard to. It's not the right guy. Well, they always say, like Emmanuel Swords said, he's all wrong for us. I think Glanton might be all wrong for Bilham Smith. This is not the guy I would have picked.
Well, in one of the losses he had on his career, I scored it for Glanton, and then the next fight the fight was overturned because the dude he faced tested positive and has a 6-year ban. 6 years. Like he basically had to be glowing when he went in and he got that test. My God.
Glanton is decent, and we don't know how. And Billum Smith, I mean, how many times can he go to the well and make it happen? I mean, I don't know how much he has left because his style just doesn't. It doesn't lead to a long career the way he fights. Every single fight is like that. So we'll see. Like I said, I lean Glanton. I think Glanton has a really good shot, and there's some more. And like you said, the people with the bet nod say that. So I lean Glanton to come through.
Yeah, Des, Glanton even money now. I actually bought him at 7-4. That's how much the odds have moved.
But didn't Glanton get beat by David Light? Didn't we see David Light
I
get beat
didn't
by
think he
Lawrence
lost.
Coley?
I didn't think he lost to David Light. He dropped David Light in the last round too. Like I did not think that Glanton lost that fight. He's just one of them hard dudes.
The matchmakers have done triangle theories here. They've looked at David Light against Lawrence Coley, who David, he was pretty ineffective. He didn't look like capable. And if he's beaten Glanton, they've thought this is a good one to bring Chris back with. Maybe they've got it wrong. It does happen. They brought Kovalev over for Cleverly. It does happen. We'll see. It'd be interesting to see that one there.
Kovalev loved being that villain too. That he just loved going over there and beating the shit out of him. He had a great time doing it. He was a sick man.
What makes me laugh about these sort of decisions is someone's got reels and reels of footage. Their job, they're paid to research. They understand every fighter across all the weight divisions. And someone looked at Kovalev and thought, yeah, he's the one for us. Let's give him to Cleverly. With matchmakers like that, who needs enemies? So maybe this is one of them. Maybe this is a mistake because it does happen quite a lot in boxing. I'll be watching it now because I didn't think Glanton would offer Billum Smith anything. Coming all the way over here, he's going to fight Billum at his own game. Billum's pretty good at that. I mean, he outfought Reactor, he outfought Coley. I mean, I thought Glanton was going to have to have a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more, one or two more gear changes if he's going to beat Billum Smith. A bit like what we saw with Ramirez, someone who offers something a bit different. But if you're saying that no, he's better at Billum Smith and what Billum Smith's good at, it'd be interesting. I'll watch that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm interested to see what it'll be by fight time. Like that's a huge move in the odds. You rarely see those kind of things. So anyhow, definitely looking forward to that one. Let's see here. James, do you have any thoughts on the undercard? Anything that you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Yard Arthur. I think the first fight, Lyndon was able to establish what he's good at and managed to keep it going for the 12 rounds. I mean, I think that was shortly after the Kovalev fight as well. Potentially good timing, given the result of the rematch where Yard looked pretty devastating. And I agree with Des that Yard has conducted most of his career at quite a low level to quite a lot of fanfare. Because look, aesthetically, he looks like a destroyer. He's taken those steps up to the top of the division, even if he's been unsuccessful. And I think against Lyndon Arthur, I think they're quite well matched, and I'm quite happy that they're making the trilogy fight. I think with Lyndon, he can almost be too patient, like looking for the perfect shot and looking to slow the pace right down. And I think if Yard doesn't allow him to do that, I think we might see a repeat of the second fight. With Chris Billum Smith, I am interested to see how he rebounds from that Ramirez loss, because Ramirez really boxed him up throughout the entirety of that fight. And after such an unexpected run against Reactor and Akoli, etc., I think what does that do to your confidence and to your self-appraisal when you've got this idea of what you're going to do, stadium fights, top of the division, blah, blah, blah. And then Ramirez comes over and does that to you. I don't think that's the best for the old self-esteem. As for, I've never seen Brandon Glanton, and after that summary from you guys, I look forward to it because that was a fight I wasn't particularly interested beforehand. Vidal Riley, I've seen little bits of him and he looks fairly sharp. I just remember he started appearing on broadcasts as one of the talking heads between fights, and I had no clue who he was. He's okay, I suppose. Like he's pretty slick for the level that I've seen him fight at. I don't know how that translates to his prospects moving forward, but Chevon Clarke is not to disparage him, but he's pretty average. So from what I've seen of the two fighters, I'd probably favour Riley in that one. Also favour Liam Smith. He's definitely in that Josh Warrington phase of his career where he's coming right to the end. And what does he get from this other than the payday? It's hard to see him challenging at title level at this stage, but always good to see a British veteran come back and get a few paydays at the end of it. I can't imagine he's looking for a Chris Eubank trilogy fight either, given the main event. So this undercard is looking a bit light in terms of numbers, but in terms of quality, I think it's fairly decent. I mean, I know you're not happy about the pay-per-view in the States, but I've seen worse cards on pay-per-view for sure.
Yeah, as far as it goes, there are, and I think one of them, it's ridiculous that the odds are this close, but there are 4 fights on that card where the odds are where the underdog is paying less than 2-1. So as far as it goes, as well-matched fights go, that's pretty good. The only one that's not within there is Yard against Arthur, where Arthur is playing 5-1, and when you're in a situation where these guys are 1-1 in a pair of fights, that's pretty decent value bet on Arthur there at 5-1. So interesting stuff there. Ames, I'll give you the last word on this undercard before we move to the main event. If you're back.
I'm here.
Yay.
I'm just pulling it back up. I did have it up.
Oh, well, real quick, I'll say Captain Casual, Mr. Damo throwing us $9.99 in there in Super Chat. Thank you so much. Just checking in some money to pay my dues for John O.D. not getting the plaudits in last week Belly of the Week for his classic, for his Usyk versus Joshua Muppets image amongst my own brilliant group, the Nutters, always making me smile. That's good, like a good Catholic going in and paying his penance. So very appreciative of that. Only one Hail Mary for you today, Damo. Only one. Ames, take it away.
Okay, so I think you guys have kind of captured it all, really. So I'll just offer you. I think personally, the best fight on the card could be Chris Smith versus Brandon Glanton. It has the possibility to be a real good, exciting, attritional affair, but an exciting fight with lots of big punches going in, or it could be like a real slow type of fight with lots of clinching and holding, and that probably would suit Crispin Smith, to be fair. I think CBS is, like you guys have said, he's sort of one of those fighters who he needs to maybe take a couple and then come back with 2s and 3s and 4s and then really grind down his opponent. And then that's when his opportunity comes, when he's sort of beating the fight out of his opponent. And he kind of comes in like a bit of a tidal wave and takes over from there, backfooting whoever he's up against. He's had momentum ever since he's joined the McGuigans, and he's rode it. Had the fights, Tommy McCarthy, added some Needle, then to Isaac Chamberlain, a traditional type of fight at Bournemouth. Jojai got a big knockout, then into Akoli, which is a former stablemate. This is all just climbing the momentum. Masnak, which was a bit of a dip, but he came through it, and that was a real tactical spot by the team to notice Masnak's ribs and then to just go for it. That caused the finish, although Bill Smith was in tough against Masnak. Then Riakporhe was a victory where they'd overturned a defeat in the past, and Riakporhe was very much confident that his power would be the difference, but he completely neutralized Riakporhe in his back garden. And then it's Ramirez, and Ramirez is a really, really good fighter. And Bill Smith, it was by no means an embarrassment for him to lose to Gilberto Ramirez, but you would wonder after that defeat, when you take stock of everything, of how Bill Smith got to that point, whether a large contribution to the defeat was how good Ramirez is, or if some of what it took to get to that point is now starting to show for Bill Smith. And a fight with Brandon Glanton is something that's going to tell, because if it's a steep decline and quick decline, then we're going to find that out. And because of the way that both fighters fight, I tend to think that this will be another tough fight, and Bill Smith does still have gas left in the tank, but it will be the way that he's done it before, and it will probably be a points win for Bill Smith, but he has to, again, throw a lot of himself into it to get the victory. But that's what you need. If he's going to continue, he's got to have the want and desire, which I'm sure he does, but he's got to have the want and desire to go through that fire again for another big opportunity. Otherwise, with Yard versus Arthur, I do get some of the criticism about that fight, because a lot of people kind of just say, why have you made that fight? Because there was no real want or desire to see it. But for me, I think with Yard's career specifically, he's kind of gone that up and down, that mellowed out and against the international opponents, and then waited for that big opportunity and done the same thing, and then looked for that big opportunity again. This is a meaningful fight in terms of there being some sort of hook on it, a decider for the two. But really and truly, if Yard's learned anything, then what he has to do is come in with a second fight mentality, and he gets the victory against someone who was essentially in retirement and said as much that he would only come out of retirement for the fight with Yard. So he's got that now. If you can upset the apple cart again, then Arthur knows what to do. But when Yard was at his best, it was Yard showed that he was the better fighter out of the two, or at least the one who could put it on him and force the stoppage out of the two of them. And that's what he's got to do. Again, he can't rest on the way the second fight went, but he knows exactly his route to victory. And nothing else will suffice, because Lyndon Arthur will beat him. And it showed that in the first one. But Arthur didn't seem to have an answer for the second fight, whereas Yard chose to box with him, and it was still a close fight from my recollection. And there was a lot going on in the background for Yard. Liam Smith versus Aaron McKenna. It's a good fight, and you got to applaud and credit the step up for Aaron. His brother Stevie lost to Lee Cutler in his last fight, and you wondered with the McKennas, because there's a lot talked about them, and there was a lot talked about Aaron at the start, but then Stevie seemed to take to the pros more, and you wondered if maybe Stevie was just suited for the game. Aaron wasn't by any means not suited to the pros, but it looked a lot better when Stevie was fighting. But he's since been defeated. And Aaron looks a little bit more. Aaron had looked a bit more better in terms of the fights he'd taken and the way some of the fights are made in terms of the matchmaking. What goes in my head for this fight as to how I see it going is, I remember being in York Hall for McKenna versus Ulysses Lima, and that was a real rock'em sock'em type of fight. And Aaron come out with big bruises and marked up face and stuff, and he did all the interviews, bless him. But Liam Smith is a established operator, and if anyone has any doubts about where Liam is and where he stands right now, you only have to look at how people spoke about Callum Smith and where he could be, and he completely flipped that script. I saw a bit of Liam training in the gym, and he looks very ready. Looks like a fighter who isn't by any means looking for just one last payday and has got a lot to give yet. And he'll want to prove that fight with Eubank Jr. was a lot to do with having to crash the weight, and his own, I guess, fault for ballooning up and not being ready. But he feels like he was kind of forced into that fight. But that aside, he'll want to show and he'll want to prove on the platform to do it, because it's on the undercard of Eubank Jr., that fight that he wants again, that third fight with him. It's got to come with a win, and even better from Smith's perspective, a knockout over McKenna. And I think he might just get that in a real game effort against Aaron McKenna. I think he possibly stops him. Vidal versus Shep Clarke. I think that's a fight where after the 5th round, whoever's put the most into their training will get that fight, because I think that could go genuinely. I think that could go either way.
Riley is a slight favorite in that fight, only just a slight favorite.
So whoever's played it tactically well after the 5th round and has got more in them, I think they'll take over, and that's and it could be either of them. So that's a hard fight to call for me. I'd probably edge to Vidal Riley as well, but that could go either way, and that's about everything, I think.
All right. And it just I hate to beat this dead horse at this point in time, but curiously, since I placed that bet on Glanton, the odds moved down as much as it did, as I said, nearly splitting in half. But 91% of all bets have been placed on CBS, which tells me that one or more very, very deep-pocketed bettors went all in on Glanton. That's the only way a market is going to move that much over a short period of time. Is it had to be huge dollars or inside knowledge on the fight. So worth considering. Anyhow, to the main event, which they want pay-per-view for in the United States. I told DAZN to shove it. I canceled my subscription because they want to have 2 more pay-per-views on top of that the next week. Told them to fuck off. Anyhow, so people on both sides of the pond paying pay-per-view for this one. Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn. Shockingly, as I'm looking at betting statistics, Eubank slight favorite with the books. I thought that would get closer since I placed a bet on him. Here, either Glanton or Eubank is going to lose because obviously they're my parlay. Take your pick. I don't know which one, but 49% of the bets have been placed on Eubank Jr. That's shocking that more people are betting on Ben. I'm kind of surprised with that, but that would hold the numbers in place. This fight, though, I just look at it like, Des, I look at this fight as a moderately talented, not really very good, though, junior welterweight against a sturdy and experienced middleweight. This isn't like Manny Pacquiao against Oscar De La Hoya, where you have a ball of talent that just is lightning speed and punches like a mule kicks. No, this is, the son of a very good fighter living off his dad's name, and ultimately the tabloid promotion of this fight from his own guilt from the first time they tried to have it for taking PEDs. I don't know. I feel like this is a paradise to put money on Chris Eubank Jr. What the hell am I missing?
You want to be careful there, because this fight it's not an evenly balanced fight. It's not a level fight. You're right what you're saying about they're both kids of a level, and it's been sold on the 2 names because 30 odd years ago the 2 fathers boxed and it stopped traffic, and they've just recycled this one, and they're both quite emotive, divisive characters in their own right, and they've probably been pushed onto a pathway to behave a certain way. I've spent time with the Benn family, and Conor is nothing like any of the Benns. I'm certain Conor, from what I've been told, people I know him have told him he's a lovely kid, and I've known his cousins and they're all lovely people. So I can only assume this is it's more panto, it's more WWE than it is pro boxing. But we are where we are, and it is happening. And boxing this fight isn't pitched to the guys on this panel as a rule. It's probably not pitched to the people in the chat or the people listening to this type of show or any other type of shows like this. This is pitched to the wider audience, the casual fan, the people that want to either relive the fight 30 years ago or tap into it.
And it also touches into that kind of misfit boxing crowd because of the tabloid publicity of it all and the way they've sold the fight. It's hitting on a couple of different cylinders, none of which are aimed at people like us at the end of the day.
Excellently put. Perfect. We've seen what Tyson and Jake Paul can do. We can see what Netflix can produce. And this is somewhere between that and what you said, Mayweather and Pacquiao. This is something in the middle. It's taken a little bit from one and a little bit from the other. And this is the hybrid version of it. But this fight worries me. And I don't enjoy this fight. I don't enjoy talking about it. And truth be told, I can't wait till it's bleeding over, to be honest.
Same thing Michael Thompson said in the chat.
Yeah, and I'm the same. And it isn't my cup of tea, this. And what I don't like about it is Ben is a solid 154 fighter coming up a division. And he's going to have the ability to eat as much as he wants and drink as much as he wants. And he can do weightlifting sessions and hit sessions. And he can do an awful lot of cardio and he can build muscle. I know all about this. He will be the lion that they're feeding. That's great. But Eubank is the lion that they're going to starve. And who's ever starved a lion before it fights? And this is really dangerous. And if I give you the numbers now, my numbers might be off. And if I'm off, please, someone jump in. Eubank's got to make 11 stone 6 on the night or the day or the weigh-in. Now that ain't as bad as it sounds. He can do that. It's not healthy for him because he's a solid 12 stone fighter. And if he's a 12 stone fighter, he probably walks around at about 13-10. So coming down a stone 10 is hard, but to throw another half a stone on top of it is really difficult. But the argument would be, I've got 24 hours to rehydrate. But not in this case. He's got to hit the scales 10 o'clock the next morning or something like that. And he can't be 10 pound over. So he can only do 12-2 the following day, which is the morning of the fight. Now, anyone that's lost that much weight, anyone that's drawn their body down from, say, what he walks about at, which is 13-10, down to 12, down to 11-6. I know there's a lot of numbers here, but if you can stay with me, if he can draw his body down to 11-6, he can't even have a cracker and a bit of cheese because his body will hold on to that. If he has a glass of water, it will hold on to it. I know I've done this. I've lost stupid weight. I've crashed it off. You have an apple and you put 9 pound on. Your body don't respond well when you're down there. It's unnatural. Your head doesn't fit your body anymore. It's too big for your shoulders. Your legs are skinny. Your feet are too big for your legs. It's really, really odd. It's dangerous. So Chris is going to weigh in at 11-6, 24 hours before the fight. Then he can't eat much because if he eats too much, he just won't skip it off. He won't lose it. Because I've seen guys in saunas for an hour shadowboxing and they've not lost a pound. I've known guys to go into a gym with a plastic suit on and skip and shadowbox and not lose a pound. When your body holds it, it doesn't give it back to you.
Now, our mutual friend from Brighton says that Eubank should have no trouble whatsoever making the weight.
Right, so I'm not that, and again, it's not my point. He'll make 11-6. That wasn't the point I was making. So he'll make 11-6, but he can't rehydrate. He can't take the handbrake off after the first weigh-in. He's got to keep within a 10 pound limit, which is 12-2 by the next day. So he's going to effectively go another maybe 12, 14 hours of not being able to eat or drink. Because the minute he puts something in his mouth, he'll put 5-6 pounds on. If he has anything substantial, he'll put a stone on and he won't get it off. So now you've got all these sort of problems. If I said to you, Roger Federer's got to go into a Grand Slam tennis tournament and use someone else's racket, you say, no, he wouldn't do it. If I said Ronnie O'Sullivan's got to go into a Masters and not use his own cue, he wouldn't do it. He'd refuse. If I said to Kylian Mbappe, you've got to wear someone else's boots, he wouldn't do it. And this is all just for comfort and success. But this is danger. And we're allowing boxers to get down to these unhealthy weights, but he'll make the weight. We know he'll make the weight. He'll starve himself. We all know what boxers do. he's not allowed to rehydrate himself. So he's got to hang it out the following morning. And then he's got that window of 10, 12 hours where in between eating, your body breaking it down, your body being exhausted, being on and off the toilet, he's got to then go and perform. And that involves nervous energy. Like, this is a very, very unsafe situation. And it's a really unhealthy thing to do. I'm trying to stay away from what the dad said. But I've got to say, for whatever reason he made them points, his points are correct. This is really dangerous. I don't like the fight. I don't like the way they're drawing him down. I think it's sinister. I think it's dangerous. And all these people have been involved in boxing where people have been seriously hurt. They've been involved in life-changing injuries to boxers. They've been around the sport where people have died while they was active fighters. Promoters have had fighters die on their shows. I'm with Donald McRae. Tell me how anyone can do this with a clear conscience. And if they all get paid, is that what it is then? So we're now like Bonnie Blue, are we? Anything. We'll do anything as long as we get paid. Fair enough. But it ain't for me, this. I don't like it. I think it's dangerous. And I'm not really interested in it, to be honest, mate.
Interesting. That was a fairly dark take on it all. Let's see. James, are you going to take us a more optimistic route?
I'll try my best. No, I actually quite. I agree with Des in that it is the weight disparity between the two is problematic, and imagine how much more pronounced it would have been in the first fight, because they were trying to draw Eubank down to like 157, I think, and I was convinced that Ben was going to leave him unconscious in that fight, to be honest, and I was not relieved because I wanted to see it, but I was
James,
actually...
look what Liam Smith did to Chris.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that was a little bit of time after. And that was a bit of time after. Look at Roy Jones was never the same again, going up there and having to cut it down. I'm sorry to interrupt you, James. This isn't because laymen or people that I don't understand will think, oh, well, it's only got to make 11.6. It's only like half a stone what you normally make. We're not talking about the initial first weight. We're talking about the clause where you can't go over 12.2. That's what's going to catch him, because he won't be able to rehydrate. He won't be able to eat, because if he goes anywhere near, if he looks at a meal, he'll put 9 or 10 pound on, and he just won't get it off. You can't skip it off, because once your body gets it, it goes, nah, you're not having that back. Sorry, James.
No, it's cool. You're right. He's going to be compromised physically, and on the other side of that coin, Ben is going to be as powerful as he's ever been. And I think, to be honest, I know, it's difficult to talk about these two fighters without talking about their dads. But if you take their dads out of the picture, Conor Benn, I know he's easy to criticise because of the way he behaves, and I'd be one of them people. He does my head in when I see him in interviews. But as a fighter, I think, he's grew up and developed in front of the camera, which is not an easy thing to do. And I remember the Cedric Payno fight earlier in his career when he got dropped pretty heavily, like twice in the first round. Came back to drop Payno late on. I can't remember if it was once or twice, and he came through like a pretty stellar test there. And later on in his career, now obviously it's come to light that he was potentially using PEDs, but he was on a run there where he started to knock people cold a little bit. So if you think that guy with that experience and his particular style, I mean, say what you want about him, he's got a lot of strings to his bow. He gets in and out really quickly, good head movement, can punch up and down, can take a shot, he's game, he's fit, he's aggressive. If you let that guy go through training camp, full tilt, not having to cut weight, fully hydrated, happy as Larry, whistling to the scales, you've got a problem for Chris Eubank Jr. there. And Eubank Jr. is the older fighter as well. And I don't think he's ever had the fastest hands or the fastest feet. His style deficiencies, if you can call them that, work for him. But I've always favoured Ben in this fight because of his aggression and his speed. And he's just a nasty fighter. And, I feel like that's going to do him the world of good in this, aside from being fully hydrated and fully fed. conversely, when it comes to the build-up, it is WWE, and I did think that Chris Eubank Jr. played an absolute blinder, not only with the egg, with the slap, which is just like meme, like top meme level. He went and made the gesture to pay people from the first fight who suffered as a result of the card being cancelled. Now, you couldn't make Eddie Hearn look worse quicker, and he's just been stirring the pot and winding everyone up and making them look bad. So that's kind of a separate issue to the fight itself. But in terms of getting the public on your side, Chris Eubank Jr. is another chalk and cheese fighter. You know what I mean? He's rubbing you the wrong way or you love him type thing. And I think for me anyway, he turned public perception in his favour with the way he behaved here. He was more like the seasoned veteran who's been through this 100 times before. Whereas Conor Benn seems like a bit of a petulant kid at times when you see he's ready to jump up from the table. He lost the head entirely when he got slapped with the egg. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know how much that dynamic is going to stretch into the fight. I think by the time the opening bell goes, I think their minds will be on the job. And that being the case and the weight being taken into consideration, I favour Conor Benn in this fight quite heavily.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first fight, when it was arranged, I favored Ben too, but that's because I thought making 157 pounds was going to be absolute hell for Eubank, and that probably that Conor Benn was on steroids. And I never got to be proven right or wrong on that 157 pounds, but lo and behold, the other one. But I don't know, Justin, that 10 pounds, it is tough because you think about it, he's going to have to drink water and just getting to a point where his body is rehydrated and he's, peeing again, probably 5-6 pounds of fluid. So yeah, it's not a whole bunch to eat there, but I don't know. I just, everybody's thinking about this version of Ben, that version of Ben. I think the only version of Ben we really know is the one that seemed very limited, fighting at 3 o'clock in Las Vegas about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, unless I think everybody, I'm not going to talk long. It's pretty much summed up. If the weight cut and everything and doesn't kill Eubank and he can get by and he's fine with that, he should beat Ben. Ben sucks. He's not that good. He's very limited. I think his only hope is that Eubank is just health. Eubank is just too dead. Killed himself to get there. I don't know. That's his only hope, is that Eubank doesn't have it, because just one-on-one, Eubank's better. And like you said, he is, was it Bill? What's the guy's name? Like Pistol Pete Dobson. That's who Ben is.
There you go. Yep.
That's who Ben is. He is Pistol Pete Dobson. He's Paynoed. That's what he is. He's a slightly below European level type guy. And I don't care what anybody says. Nobody's convinced me he's any better than that. This is why he's fighting fights like this. It's very simple for me. If Eubank didn't kill himself and he has enough left, he should beat Ben. I think it's going to be a competitive fight just because of the weight loss, and Ben's going to try, but he should beat him. I hope it's a quick knockout, whoever wins. I don't think we need to see 12 rounds or whatever of this. The only thing that's going to hurt us as fans is if it is a good fight, we're going to see it again. That's the only bad thing about this. If it's a good fight, we will 1,000% see this again. So I hope it's not a good fight. I hope it's quick. I hope it's over. Then we don't have to deal with it anymore. Because for some reason, if this turns into a war, and this is a decent fight, even if it don't even have to be good. You know how it is. If it's just okay, they're going to do it again.
Good enough with some moments.
That's all it's going to take, is just a little drama, and then they're going to do it 5 times. Because these guys, think about it, where else are they going to go to make this kind of money? They'll fight. Ben obviously has nothing. He has no money. He has to, so he needs all of these. So, it's just, I hope somebody comes in there and gets annihilated either way quickly, get it over with. Nobody needs to take a beating. We don't need any of that. Just come in there, get 2 or 3 rounds, get it over, and then let's move on. And hopefully we won't have to deal with this again. But, I'm not these people that are losing their mind about this fight. It's the weight cut and all that, it sucks. But I mean, but this is boxing. People have been doing crazy shit for years. We can't stop it. All you can do is not watch it. That's not going to happen. People are going to still watch it. You just have to live with it. You can get upset about it. You can, but I mean, they chose to do this. That's what I always say in the end. We didn't make them do it. We're not making Eubank cut this weight. He decided to do it. This was his decision. He's a man. He's a grown-ass man. If he wants to dehydrate his ass and he wants to do all the stuff he's doing, that's his decision. He's not getting forced to do it. And he'll have to live with the consequences, both of them, if anything bad happens, which, I mean, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but yeah, they're men. They made this call, so that it's just they have to live with it, and I will watch it. I'm not going to sit there and watch it closely. I just hope it doesn't last that long, and then we don't have to see it again.
Justin, you know, you say that you hope nothing. You hope nothing goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
You put it into context. There's a very good chance that Chris Eubank was starting his malnourished phase 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, he's not going to be in the best of health. No, there's no way he can be in the best of health.
There's a very good chance he's been going through camp at stages where he's been semi-dehydrated.
I'm sure he has, but I mean,
you know, like, this is so dangerous. And like,
it is.
We've seen fighters. You know, probably the most recent one I can recall was when Tony Bellew went out to Canada to fight Adonis Stevenson, and he was a skeleton. And you look at him and think, wow, this kid on the scales looks awful, and you know he can't win this fight. You just can't win this fight. And then you see him in there, and his legs are gone. He can't move. He's got no pop. Like, he can't hold a shot. This guy is a shadow of what he should be.
That's the commission. You got to blame the commission, though. That they're the one that allows it to happen. I don't blame the fighters. I don't blame Tony Bellew for going down to the skeleton and making the money. You have to blame the people that allow it to happen.
And you know, like what Tony Bellew's saving grace was? You know what his thing was? His carrot was, no, I've got 24 hours to rehydrate. I will get off them scales, protein shake, glucose, electrolytes. I'm gonna go to the toilet 2 or 3 times before I go to bed. My body will adjust. I'm gonna be able to have a good sleep, so my body will break it all down. But Eubank can't do that. Eubank can't start that process till, I don't know what time the weigh-in is the next day, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And even then, that whole process of breaking the food down, your body adapting, how you're going to rehydrate in that period of time, it's just, and thrown into that, there's a lot of travel involved. He's got to get to the arena, then he's got to get his hands done, then he's got to get out there, nervous energy, throw that into the mix. I really can't see how this is enough window. I mean, 24 hours is a dangerous window, but I can't see how this is going to be enough time. And we only have to go back a few years where we was told by the Board of Control that same-day weigh-ins are unhealthy. But we're having them now. This is the same-day weigh-in. And this is for a kid that's having to get down to 11.6 and can't go over 12.2. And I make the point again, when he's down at 11.6, he's only got to look at a bowl of porridge or egg on toast. He'll put 9-10 pounds on. If he has a drink with it, there's over a stone. If he has a second meal, he's like 1.5 stones over. And he could go into a sauna and shadow box for an hour. He won't lose 2 pounds because your body ain't letting that go. It takes time. It's an adjustment period when you cut weight. It's a very, very dangerous game they're playing. And
would you take the money loss? I mean, like, if you were his team, would you look at, like, say he's making, I don't know how much he's making for this, but would you look at it and say, screw it, we're going to give him $500,000. We'll take the extra 5 pounds. I mean, they might go with that strategy. I don't know. I mean, it's like, would you have somebody with you saying, pay him the money, come in over?
What I'm certain of, right? I'm certain that these two kids go through money like water, right? There's a reason why they're doing. There's a reason why they're doing this. They need the money.
He took that $100K fucking fine for smacking the egg upside his face and did not give a fuck about it.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe he's like, the win's worth it. I don't know if he would take the loss.
Well, Eubank's done 150 quid before the fight's even started because he's given fighters 50 grand.
Yeah,
and he's laid out 100 grand fine. Don't forget what he's got to pay everyone. Plus, you're talking about now £500,000 fight. I mean, the fines for missing the weight are going to be through the roof.
How much is per person? Anybody said that? Like how much they're making?
Oh, they're making
know
up
what
probably
the- I don't
$2 or
know
$3
fines
million. They've got to be making in that realm of
Yeah, so he can't lose. I mean, it depends on how much. I think it boils down to how much he wants to lose. Because if he's only got, like, say you're only a couple, say you're 2 or 3 pounds, why would you kill yourself? Just give him $200,000.
Matty, did you say they're making $2 or $3 million each?
You'd have to think it's around there. I'll go ahead and Google. Actually, Ames, you're on the call.
More like 8 or 9.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, then who gives a fuck?
Yeah, give him $1 million. 10 pounds. I mean, whatever. Yeah, take it. Take it all. Who cares? I'll keep 7. You can keep $1 million. Whatever.
It's obscene, and this whole scenario that we're laying out now, in terms of how much Team Ben and how much Chris Eubank and his team have agreed to in terms of the restrictions that he's placed himself under, that it kind of speaks to his character that he chose to go through with the 157 cut the first time around, and it ended up costing him against Liam Smith. But yeah, maybe he just thinks Conor Benn's not good enough. I'll cut the weight. I've done it before. I'll do it again, and I'll still smash him up. And obviously, this is a confidence thing, and you don't get many fighters who are more confident than Chris Eubank Jr. Is it the smartest thing? Probably not. And it just takes one shot, really. But, you know, I honestly don't think the promoters, the commissions, they care. This is a big money fight, and that's all that matters. That's all that ever matters. You know, weight cutting is one of the more insidious things about the sport, and everyone cries about PEDs, you know, and, you know, maybe that's correct and maybe that's incorrect, but weight cutting is, everyone knows it's dangerous, but because it's part of the sport, and as Des has pointed out, they're slowly creeping back towards like the weigh-ins of the 80s and 90s, just through contract stipulations and penalties, and trying to, you know, wrangle every last penny out of the opponent through fines, etc. The people involved in making this fight, the people who are in charge, do not care about what could possibly go wrong, because they're fully aware of what can possibly go wrong, and they still endorse and still allow and still strive for these stipulations to be put in place. So they don't care. It's about the dough. At the end of the day, they'll come on TV like the following morning, say what a tragedy it is, give some money to a charity, and they'll crack on to the next pay-per-view.
Excellent points. This nice conversation here. Ames, I'll give you the final take on this one, sir.
Hello. What's my take on the fight? I think I really reserve true judgment on, I guess, how the fight goes until I've seen Eubank Jr. on the scales. I've had conversations with multiple trainers, and I've heard lots of different things about the fight. And one of the things that sticks in my mind is, you would think that, and just to have the discussion about it, you would imagine that Eubank Jr. would have the financial pull to bring in the best nutritionists to get down this weight cut and rehydration to an exact science where they can mitigate whatever loss in performance there is in having to make the weight. But I haven't had the conversation with that person to really lay out that whole process, apart from Jonathan Banks the other day, who just said it was about managing that, and I wouldn't imagine it would be Jonathan Banks' job to manage that specifically. I imagine it would be someone outside of him to get that down. And
Ames, I've got to ask you something, Ames. Sorry, mate.
Yeah,
I love this. I love listening to you speak, Ames. I've got no. I absolutely agree. There will be some sort of scientist that knows how to feed him and get him to that weight on the dot, and he'll make that weight for.
I know what you're going to say,
30 seconds.
But what weight is it? Like, is it water and he just pisses it off? I get what you're saying.
And how do you keep that weight and then perform in a boxing ring? So they're two mutually exclusive things, and I don't think there's a person in the world that can say, "Oh no, I could get him to that weight safely," but then send him out to fight. It's a different one.
No, I get that, and that's a conversation I want to have with whoever that person is in the team. I've heard, so that's the conversation I had from one trainer when I asked them. I've heard another one that I said, like, look, as long as he has enough time in the day to rehydrate, you could probably get there, and maybe they have a functional way of getting there that I'm not aware of. Aware of. Again, that's a gap in knowledge that I have, but that's something I'll look to find out. As far as I'm aware, he has to weigh in at 8 a.m. on the next day, so he has all that time until the ring walk to do what he needs to do to be in whatever shape he needs to be in for them to get the victory from their perspective. But I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what he'll look like, and I don't know the science behind that. I understand and share the frustrations and reservations that Eubank Senior and others have. I think it's also a bit of a shame that I get promoters have to sell tickets, but that conversation has sort of been quashed and quelled and silenced. And I think that conversation does need to be had. And you would like to know that there was, at least even just in the simplest way, to just say that there are people in place to say that if something isn't made safely, that they would be withdrawn, and you would have the confidence that that wouldn't take place because of the tragedies that have happened in the past. And you only have to look at recently with the miracle mile that Michael Watson did in aid of iNeuro, with trying to raise money for, I think, to further research in brain injuries and recovery from significant injury from brain trauma. You would think that maybe those sort of things are in place. Not saying they're not, but I just don't know. I don't have the knowledge that they are. There's when I spoke to Peter Hamlin, he mentioned a number of things that contribute to those sort of injuries, and he said one is mismatches, and one can argue that that might be exhibited here. Two would be same day weigh-ins, and again, you can argue that's, although they're weighing in on the Friday, Eubank Jr. also has to weigh in on the Saturday, so you can say that here. And the other thing would be not the right medical equipment being in place and not quick enough either. And I think that's sort of been satisfied off the back of the tragedies that have been before. They've made sure to promoters across the nation, made sure that there are things in place to get effective care and urgent care in place as quickly as, or as urgently as it's needed. But the other two things can be argued that there are worries and concerns in the fight. And those are things that, in looking at the fight, you, like Des has mentioned, you obviously worry about as something could happen. There's the flip of it, from taking it from Eubank Jr.'s perspective, is Conor Benn's perspective as well. And I said this from the start. I know that Eddie's been saying like no one's talked about this at all. That's not true. I remember when I was at Boxing Social on a podcast, I remember saying, like, even from Conor Benn's perspective, it's dangerous for him to jump up. And I just mentioned there about Peter Hamlin saying that one thing that contributes to that is mismatches. One person could argue as well that Conor Benn hasn't fought any live contender as of yet since since Cedric Paynold. I think he might have gone in against Formella, who went the distance and knocked out Algieri, and who was the other gentleman? Vargas and Van Heerden. And then he fought Orozco, and then he fought Dobson. And with respect to either Orozco or Dobson, although I think Dobson is a good victory, I would say he has one good victory at Super Welter, or decent victory at Super Welter. And then, but has he fought a contender at Super Welter? No. Has he fought someone of good ilk at Super Welter? Maybe you'd argue that. But at middleweight, no. This would be his first time at middleweight and against someone who's going to be 170. And let's just say Eubank Jr. is, and they've got the science down, and he is in peak performance, as close to that. Then from Ben's point of view, he's also in against someone who has vastly more experience and then way over him, at least in terms of fighting contenders. So you've got to look at that perspective as well. And it's sort of like you've answered danger with danger. And I don't think that's a real good recipe for a fight, particularly, especially when you widen the context of the fight is one of the very few fights in the UK that can cross over into the mainstream. and we've already shown boxing back in the mainstream as something that you could on a day, not a day, but it's sold on the basis of an egg slap, striking your opponent outside of the ring. Eubank Senior's saying, you've bad language and things like that, but basically in a way that's not sportsman-like. There's no sportsmanship in there, and the sport aspect has kind of been taken away from what boxing actually is. And you would hope that on an occasion where it does cross over in the mainstream, that nothing bad would happen, because it would bring a spotlight onto the sport, which we need a moment like these, or in moments like these, to really boost boxing up higher, to get the interest in it, as opposed to talking about boxing and the safety implications of the sport. Those are concerns that I hope aren't being addressed more so after the fight, because both fighters have come out of this fight with their health, but it's a possibility. And I hope we don't come to that bridge on after Saturday night. If taking that out of the mix, as the fight as a whole, I think it's a fight where Eubank Jr. again playing. Let's discuss the fight as if Eubank Jr. is in a position that he's in, that he can make the weight safely, and he's come to the ring and he's in a peak performance to take on Conor Benn. Conor Benn's coming in as well. I would say that after 4 or 5 rounds, once Conor Benn's speed and his bit of power has started to drop in levels, that's when Eubank Jr. would take over. And I would think that Eubank Jr. would then dominate from then and win probably on points. I could see that Eubank Jr. also might let the fight go, because he plays with his food a little bit. And he has done sometimes in fights as well. The Zerometa fight, he could have got Zerometa out a lot earlier. And you might say that might be because he's dropped his performance as well too. I'd probably say that it's because he was in with someone he knew wasn't up to the standard that he was. But I would suggest that Eubank Jr. would be the favourite in the fight, but there's a lot going on to even get to that point beforehand. That's everything.
Fantastic.
On mute?
Yep, I was on mute. But fantastic take on the fights, everybody. This has been 3.5 hours. I'm very impressed that we were able to stretch it out this long. But we had a great group today. Really enjoyed everything that happened today. We got Danielle DeRossi and Mr. Captain Casual, Damo himself, dropping us super chats. We very much appreciate that from both of you folks. And we will be back here on Sunday to review all of these fights and also give preview for the huge Cinco de Mayo weekend that lays before us and all the good that comes with that. You know, if you want to spend the money, because nobody who listens to this show illegally streams fights. We're not that type of people, are we? Anyhow. But yeah, it's been a great time. I would like to thank Justin, Dez, James, Ames from Seconds Out, Rob Kelly, and also God, someone else was in there too, wasn't there?
Matt Butters.
And Matt Butters. Yeah, fantastic. It was a great time. We really stretched it out this week, but I appreciate everybody for taking part in this podcast, and we will see you fine folks next week.
And honestly, happy Easter, everybody, you guys. Jesus was resurrected.
We'll never forget.
Golly, that's good at me.
Go to move!
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch.
I've never met a fucking wank that can fight me.
I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year ain't it? 7-year ain't it?
I won't fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I
I love boxing sounds. Simple as that.